Chapter 730. Huiting coldly laughed. He had noticed that Bai Ying's gaze would occasionally land on Bai Zhan when the two of them had called out to bid earlier. From the way he thought about it, this monster core should be auctioned for Bai Zhan. Bai Zhan had been trapped at the Do Di realm for many years. This was an indisputable fact in everyone's eyes. Even if he were to obtain this monster core and refine it, the wild and violent energy within the monster core would be completely refined. Even if he were to swallow it, the effect would be extremely small. At the very most, it would allow him to break through to a 2-star Do Di. However, there was still a world of difference when compared to their Hua clan. At the end of the day, he is just a piece of trash. Just take it. Humph. Huiting coldly snorted. Although he was still unwilling in his heart, the ultimate goal of this trip was not this. He could not lose the big picture for a small gain. Huiting exchanged glances with Hua Yuning by the side. Seeing that the latter's face did not show any emotion, Huiting finally returned to his seat. His gaze was cold as he looked at Bai Ying opposite him. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a mocking smile. Although this monster core did not land in their hands in the end, being able to make the Bai clan bleed was considered a happy thing. As for Hua Yuning, the latter was also very concerned about the monster core. However, at the same time, she also understood that the greatest goal of this trip was the final thing. Before that, they needed to preserve the strength in their hands. May I know if anyone is willing to bid a higher price? The old man's gaze slowly swept across the entire place on the auction stage. This was especially the case when his gaze passed by the few elite Do Di. His eyes would pause as though he was waiting for them to open their mouths. After looking around, the old man withdrew his gaze. He glanced at the jade box in front of him. After which, he turned his gaze and looked at Bai Ying in the viewing gallery. In that case, I would like to congratulate this mister for successfully obtaining this 5-star Do Di class monster core with 5 high spirit chi methods and 1 low spirit chi method. As he said this, the old man raised the jade box in his hand. It was as if he was telling Bai Ying that it was time to hand over the goods. Upon seeing this, the latter frowned and glanced at Huiting. Soon after, he turned his gaze towards the old man on the auction stage. He cupped his hands together respectfully towards the old man. With a wave of his large sleeve, 6 rays of light shot out from nowhere. Each of them drew a beautiful arc in the air as they swiftly shot towards the old man. On the auction stage, the old man's expression was calm. He looked at the 6 streams of light that were shooting towards him. With a wave of his sleeve, an invisible force swept out. When the 6 streams of light arrived in front of him, he had already controlled them. With a thought, they floated in front of the old man. Subsequently, after the old man carefully probed, he raised his head and swept his gaze over the entire place. Under the curious gazes of everyone present, he slowly nodded his head and said, "That's right. These are the 5 high spirit chi methods and 1 low spirit chi method. This monster core belongs to you." Finally, the jade box in the old man's hand flew out the instant his words sounded. It turned into a ray of light that flew over the heads of the group of people in the viewing gallery, attracting numerous heated gazes. Finally, Bai Ying extended his hand and beckoned. It turned into a jade box that he grabbed. After carefully inspecting it, he finally nodded gently. He turned his gaze and looked at Bai Zhan beside him. After nodding his head once again, he stored it into his storage ring. At this point, the auction of the monster core had come to an end. However, this was not the end of the auction. As various precious items flew out from the old man's hands, the originally fiery atmosphere in the auction house became even more intense. On the high platform, Xiao Yan's figure was lazily nestled in the chair. Although the items that were auctioned later were also quite valuable, there were not many that could truly attract Xiao Yan's attention. As for the people from the 2 great clans, they simply closed their eyes and rested. It was as if they were waiting for the end of the auction. Time slowly passed by. 3 days had passed since the start of the auction. During these 3 days, the atmosphere in the auction house had maintained an extremely lively state. The auctioned items were brought out one after another, causing these people to be in an extremely excited state from the beginning to the end. Almost every time an auction item was brought out, these people would shout at the top of their lungs with all their might. The atmosphere in the auction house became increasingly fiery. Spirit coins and various natural treasures, chi methods, and do techniques leaped out of the mouths of these people like flowing water. Everyone in the auction house fought with each other. On the auction stage, the various auction items in the old man's hands repeatedly changed direction. However, the smile that was revealed on his old face never disappeared. The popularity of the auction this time around had already exceeded their expectations. This caused them to be surprised. However, they were even more pleasantly surprised. The grandeur of the auction was destined to bring great profits to their auction house. Naturally, the old man would not be unhappy. After another round of auction came to an end, countless people in the viewing gallery raised their heads. Numerous pairs of bright eyes stared intently at the old man on the auction stage. They were just like a pack of hungry wolves staring at their prey. Everyone, the item that will be auctioned next is something that most of the people present here will not be interested in. Of course, if everyone is willing, feel free to bid. On the auction stage, the old man had an amiable smile on his face. A pair of bright old eyes once again swept across the entire place. Ever since the start of the auction, a smile had been hanging on the old man's face. At this moment, even the skin at the corner of his eyes had been lifted into a smile. It was as though the wrinkles had accumulated over a long period of time. At the same time that his words sounded, the old man flipped his hand. Unlike before, the thing that appeared in the air above the old man's palm was not a jade box. Instead, it was a cluster of flames. The instant this cluster of flames appeared, the temperature in the auction house immediately changed. The gazes of the various strong people in the auction house uniformly landed on the cluster of flames. Their eyes could not help but reveal a shocked expression. The bright red flame emitted an extremely high temperature. The surrounding space was slightly distorted because of this temperature. This time around, the auction item was actually a cluster of flames. However, immediately after, when the people present focused their eyes on it, they could not help but frown slightly. Although this cluster of flames appeared ferocious, when they focused their attention on it, they could clearly see that there were actually a few dark green leaves directly below the cluster of flames. They stood gracefully under the flames, as though they had not been eroded by the flames. When the crowd took a closer look, they realized that the flower stem that was connected to the few leaves actually led directly to the interior of the cluster of flames. This ball of flame and the plant beneath it were basically connected in the same breath. From this point of view, rather than calling it a ball of flame, it would be more appropriate to call it a flower with the appearance of a flame. Chapter 731. Just as this flame-like flower appeared in front of everyone's eyes, on the high platform, Xiao Yan, who was resting on a chair with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes at this moment. A tinge of surprise flashed across his eyes, and in the depths of his mind, the silent soul orb also slightly vibrated at this moment. The moment he opened his eyes, Xiao Yan's gaze immediately landed on the flame-like flower in front of the old man on the auction stage. This flame-like flower was Xiao Yan's main objective for this trip. Fire plume flower. At the same time that Xiao Yan opened his eyes, in another corner of the auction house, the Lin family father and son and Su Songming's gazes also landed on the fire plume flower at this moment. Coincidentally, their main objective for this trip was also here. As a medicinal ingredient, the fire plume flower was in great demand for many high-tier elixirs. In fact, there were some high-tier elixirs that could not be refined without the fire plume flower. This point was just like the ice spirit pill that Xiao Yan needed to refine. As a rank 3 alchemist, Su Songming naturally placed great importance on a high-tier medicinal ingredient like the fire plume flower. The reason why he participated in the auction in Xian City this time was mainly because he had heard that the fire plume flower was rumored to exist in this auction. He did not expect that he would actually come across it. As for the Lin family father and son, the reason why they wanted the fire plume flower was entirely because of Su Songming. As Lin Ran's teacher, regardless of their secret relationship, Su Songming was now a rank 3 alchemist. If they wanted to obtain his help, the Lin family had to make a contribution. For example, auctioning off the fire plume flower and then gifting it to Su Songming. This method would be able to bring the relationship between the two families closer in the shortest time possible. Furthermore, the previous unhappiness caused by the younger generation of the two families would naturally be written off. For the future of the Lin family, this was an inexhaustible benefit. After all, the power of a rank 3 alchemist was enormous. Furthermore, Su Songming was a member of the Alchemist Alliance. Once they were able to climb up this high branch, the future of the Lin family would be far greater than this. How could a small Xian city satisfy their deepest desires? What they desired was an even greater power, and the Alchemist Alliance would undoubtedly be able to help them fulfill this wish. As for Su Songming, he was merely a stepping stone on the Lin family's future path. Even though they still had to bow down to him and be courteous, they would treat all of this as an investment. When the day comes their return, they would be even more pleasantly surprised. Ladies and gentlemen, the flame in front of your eyes is actually not a real flame. It is actually a medicinal ingredient. Its name is Fire Plume Flower. Fire Plume Flower. In Shen City's eyes, Shen City's, S of, S of the crowd's eyes instantly locked eyes. This is truly unexpected. In the past, we have only heard of its name but never seen its shadow. To think that this is the legendary Fire Plume Flower. This is a medicinal ingredient used to refine rank 3 pills. TSK, not only rank 3 pills, many high-tier pills require the Fire Plume Flower as a neutralizing agent. Without the Fire Spirit Flower, those pills cannot be successfully refined. This is the main ingredient. In an instant the crowd, which had quietened down due to the old man's reminder, once again burst into an uproar. They did not expect that the Fire Plume Flower would appear this time. On the high platform, Xiao Yan's gaze locked onto the Fire Plume Flower. The fiery glow in the depths of his eyes was self-evident. At the same time, the corners of his mouth also curled into a confident smile. No matter what, this Fire Plume Flower must land in his hands today. At a certain moment, Xiao Yan seemed to have sensed something. His eyebrows slightly furrowed as he lifted his gaze and looked towards a certain direction. Ha! Immediately, Xiao Yan softly chuckled in his heart as the corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. That feeling came from the direction of Su Songming. At this moment, the latter's eyes were wide open as he stared at him. The enmity in his eyes was needless to say. Xiao Yan had embarrassed him twice. Today, in the auction, the two of them were eyeing the same item at the same time. This time, no matter what, Su Songming would definitely not let Xiao Yan take advantage of him. Everyone, regarding the Fire Plume Flower, I believe that I do not need to introduce it further. The starting price is 8 million spirit coins and each increment must not be less than 500,000 spirit coins. Of course, you can also use items of similar value as the auction item. Now, the auction for the Fire Plume Flower begins. Even though the Fire Plume Flower itself was extremely valuable, the people present were not fools. Even though the Fire Plume Flower was good, in this world, other than alchemists, ordinary people would not be able to do anything about it even if they were to obtain it. If it were to be eyed by some people with bad intentions, it would instead become a hot potato. Because of this, although most of the people present were passionate about the Fire Plume Flower, after some deliberation in their hearts, they still withdrew their thoughts. Although the treasure was good, it was not something that anyone could possess. Furthermore, they were unable to use it and there was no value in keeping it in their hands. Rather than that, it was better to wait and see. I am willing to bid 8 million spirit coins. Just as everyone was secretly hesitating whether to bid or not, on the high platform, the head of the Lin family, Lin Zehong, suddenly stood up and opened his mouth. His voice was like the sound of a bell, reverberating endlessly in the vast auction house. Seeing this scene on the other side, Su Songming, who was staring at Xiao Yan, was slightly stunned. Then, the corners of his mouth curled into a satisfied smile. This was what he wanted to see. He did not have to put in any effort for the Lin family to help him auction off the Fire Plume Flower. This would undoubtedly save him a lot of money, so why would he not do it? However, Su Songming did not seem to think that if the Lin family did not intend to give him the Fire Plume Flower that they had auctioned off, how would he end up then? Fortunately, the Lin family's so-called motive for auctioning off the Fire Plume Flower was him, Su Songming. However, it was poles apart from his inner thoughts. On the other side, when Xiao Yan heard that the first person to bid was actually from the Lin family, his face did not show much surprise. These two families were in the same boat and were jackals of the same tribe. The Lin family's action was completely within Xiao Yan's expectations. I bid 10 million spirit coins. Xiao Yan's face was calm as he said faintly. It was as if he did not care about the 10 million spirit coins. In fact, this was indeed the case. Chapter 732. 10 million spirit coins. After Xiao Yan's word sounded, the gazes of everyone in the auction ground immediately gathered on Xiao Yan's body. Numerous gazes were filled with shock. Everyone had a stunned expression on their faces. Who would have expected that this mysterious black-robed person would actually make such a big move? At this moment, even the people from the Hua clan and the Bai clan on the tall platform could not help but shift their gazes over. The two people from the Hua clan frowned as they stared at Xiao Yan, who was facing off against Su Songming in the auction ground. A strange expression involuntarily flashed across their eyes. 10 million spirit coins. If it was them, it was not that they could not take it out. However, it would also cause them to suffer a great loss. In that case, it would be troublesome for them in the auction later on. On the other side, the father and son of the Bai clan similarly stared at Xiao Yan in the auction ground. Bai Zhan's face revealed the same expression as the others. On the other hand, a worried expression involuntarily flashed across Bai Ying's face. Although he did not plan to auction this fire plume flower, the person in front of him gave him a strange feeling. That feeling was like... It was like a certain person, someone who had left a deep impression on him. I bid 11 million spirit coins. It was a long while later when the old man on the auction stage could not help but speak. Only then did the head of the Lin clan's face turn gloomy. His tone was especially deep and it sounded as though it was forcefully squeezed out from between his teeth. 12 million spirit coins. Xiao Yan's expression did not change. He even stared intently at Su Songming in front of him. His eyes were cold and indifferent, without the slightest emotion. There was even a trace of a cold smile hidden within. Seemingly having sensed this, Su Songming involuntarily shivered. As a rank 3 alchemist, Su Songming's sensitivity was far from what an ordinary elite Do Di could compare with. Even the two from the two large clans could not be compared with him. In the huge auction ground, everyone's gaze repeatedly swept back and forth between Xiao Yan and Lin Zheong. Until now, the situation in the auction ground was still within the control of these two people. However, when comparing them, most people still leaned towards Xiao Yan. This was because he was too calm. Xiao Yan was as calm as a stone pillar. Wind could not blow him away and lightning could not strike him. Regardless of how furious Su Songming was, Xiao Yan remained unmoved. At this moment, Lin Zheong's expression was gloomy. He had long expected that his Lin Zheong would pay a great price to curry favor with Su Songming. However, he did not expect that this black-robed person would be so calm. The latter's calmness caused Lin Zheong's heart to feel increasingly uneasy. Even though he continuously warned himself in his heart, once his state of mind was affected, it was not something that could be easily calmed down. I bid 13 million spirit coins. Lin Zheong clenched his teeth. His heart became increasingly anxious. 13 million spirit coins was already considered a large sum to their Lin clan. Once they took it out, it would definitely affect the foundation of their Lin clan in Xian City. 14 million. Xiao Yan's expression was calm. His tone was calm and neither salty nor indifferent. The words from his mouth immediately followed Lin Zheong's words. It seemed that he did not intend to give the latter any chance to breathe. Hearing the words that came out of Xiao Yan's mouth once again, Lin Zheong's body instantly became sluggish. Within his eyes, his pupils could not help but shrink slightly. A thread of cold sweat slowly rolled down from the corner of his forehead, indicating the struggle in his heart. If they increased the price, it would affect the foundation of the Lin family. If they did not increase the price, it would affect the relationship between the Lin family and Su Songming. This would indirectly affect the future of the Lin family. Both of these factors were extremely important to the current Lin family. No matter which one they lost, the future of the Lin family would be affected. Damn it! It's all because of you. If not for you, this fire plume flower would belong to my Lin clan. Staring at Xiao Yan from afar, Lin Zheong could not help but feel a ball of anger rising in his heart. He continuously struggled in his heart. After a long while, he finally opened his mouth again. I bid 15 million spirit coins. Lin Zheong said in a deep voice. His voice was so deep that it sounded like a low growl. 20 million spirit coins. This time, Xiao Yan directly increased the price by 5 million spirit coins. This caused Lin Zheong's body to violently tremble. The crowd in the auction hall also instantly focused their gazes on Xiao Yan. At this moment, every one of them had their mouths agape. Their faces were filled with a stunned expression. At this moment, Xiao Yan was like a lunatic in their eyes. A lunatic who had no scruples. Even if he did not lack spirit coins, Money should not be squandered like this. That was a total of 20 million spirit coins. On the auction stage, the old man's face was all smiles as he looked at Xiao Yan on the stage. He recognized that it was this black-robed person who had won the first auction item. Moreover, from the looks of Xiao Yan's calm manner at this moment, it appeared that he did not care about 20 million ling coins. As he thought of this, an additional curiosity appeared in the old man's eyes when he looked at Xiao Yan. It should be known that this was 20 million spirit coins. Even if it was him, he would have to think twice before taking out this amount of spirit coins. This fellow, where did he come from? Before this, I don't seem to have heard of someone like him. The old man quietly frowned in his heart. He randomly guessed Xiao Yan's identity. As for the 4 large sects and the like, they were all thrown out of his mind right from the start. This was because the old man had already seen through Xiao Yan's strength right from the start. A bandit. He did not think that such a person would belong to the 4 large sections. It should be known that the few true geniuses within the 4 large sects had already reached the Do D class. It was also at this moment that the situation in the auction finally changed. The old man is willing to take out 10 low-grade spirit stones to auction this fire plume flower. Su Songming, who was standing opposite of Xiao Yan, stared intently at Xiao Yan. A cold smile, ridicule and disdain surged into his old eyes. What is the use of having so many spirit coins? The so-called spirit coins are nothing in front of spirit stones. Su Songming said disdainfully in his heart. At the same time, he extended his hand and exposed it to the air. A thought passed through his mind and a wave of light flashed. Soon after, 10 smooth white energy crystals, which were like suet jade, appeared in the air above Su Songming's extended hand and quietly floated. These 10 snow-white energy crystals were precisely 10 spirit stones. Hua! The appearance of this scene caused everyone in the auction ground to be shocked once again. They did not expect that a mere fire plume flower would actually cause such an uproar. Not only was the high price of 20 million spirit coins, even spirit stones were taken out. Chapter 733. In the huge auction hall, countless burning gazes fell on Su Songming like spotlights. To be precise, they were staring at the 10 spiritual stones that were floating in front of him. Everyone knew that all of the spirit coins on the continent were ultimately derived from spirit ores. Therefore, the value of spirit ores was usually above the value of spirit coins, which was exactly what was happening at the auction house at the moment. Xiao Yan had taken out 20 million spirit coins. Although the amount seemed to be a lot, if one were to really compared to 20 million spirit coins, almost everyone would choose 10 spiritual stones. The value of spiritual stones was incomparable to spirit coins. This was also the reason why Su Songming had such an insolent expression. Spirit coins were worthless in front of spiritual stones. Su Songming's lips slowly curled into a smile as he felt everyone's burning gazes on him. Under his deliberate control, the 10 spirit stones were like trophies revolving around Su Songming's body. He was like a champion under everyone's gaze, like a resplendent star. Senior, you can drop the hammer now. Su Songming's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. He shifted his gaze and looked at the elder on the auction stage below. He did not care about Xiao Yan at all. It was as if the battle had ended with the spiritual stones in his hand. At this moment, he was only waiting for the moment to settle the score. Mister, why are you so anxious? That person has not said that this is the end. The elder smiled faintly. From Xiao Yan's calm expression, he could tell that the latter's heart was not affected at all. Haha, you're just a half-emperor. Even if you can take out 20 million spirit coins, this should be your limit. Let's not talk about how many spirit coins you have left. Based on the number of spirit stones you have, as long as you can take out 1 spirit stone more than me, I will give you this fire plume flower and the 10 spirit stones as a gift. The corners of Su Songming's mouth curled into a disdainful sneer. Speaking of spirit coins, perhaps the black-robed man in front of him still had some. But speaking of spirit stones, even the 10 spirit stones in his hand were not easy to come by. How could he believe that the black-robed man in front of him had spirit stones? The crowd burst into an uproar as soon as these words were spoken. Everyone hated that they didn't have 11 spirit stones. Otherwise, they would have taken the spirit stones from Su Songming's hands. Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows and a strange expression appeared on his face. He looked at Su Songming in the distance as if he was looking at a fool. Humph, since you don't have it, then sit down obediently. This old man is determined to get the fire plume flower. A ruthless look appeared on Su Songming's face. After suffering 2 blows, this time, he could finally repay the pain that Xiao Yan had caused him. Hee, who told you that I can't take out spirit stones? Are spirit stones exclusive to you? However, Xiao Yan smiled coldly. His smile was filled with mockery. Ugh! Upon hearing this, Su Songming's expression was slightly stunned. Soon after, a thick feeling of unease swiftly rose from the bottom of Su Songming's heart. Don't tell me. He really has spirit stones. Su Songming's heart was slightly sluggish. He really didn't dare to believe that this black-robed man really had spirit stones. One must know that after so many years of hard work and savings, the number of spirit stones that he had accumulated was only 100. This time, for the fire plume flower, he had already taken out 1/10 of his spirit stones. How could this half-emperor before him have spirit stones? Under everyone's gazes, the smile that was lifted from the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth became increasingly cold. He did not expect that Su Songming would actually say such words. This was no different from cupping one's hands and giving it away. Heh, who doesn't have spirit stones? Xiao Yan softly sneered. Soon after, with a thought, the space in front of him suddenly distorted. Soon after a flash of light, a completely white energy crystal appeared in front of Xiao Yan. This was a spirit stone. However, after seeing this scene, the worry on Su Songming's face instantly disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by a sinister sneer. Ha 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 ha. So, you only have 1 spirit stone. Just based on this, you want to obtain the fire plume flower, you. However, before the laughter from Su Songming's mouth sounded, the empty space in front of Xiao Yan became distorted once again. Another spirit stone appeared. Soon after, another one appeared. When Xiao Yan finally stopped, there were exactly 11 spirit stones floating in front of Xiao Yan. Compared to the spirit stones that Su Songming had taken out, there was 1 spirit stone more. How is this possible? Su Songming's face was filled with disbelief. He really didn't expect that Xiao Yan would actually be able to take out 11 spirit stones. In his anger, Su Songming waved his sleeve without hesitation. Immediately, another 10 spirit stones appeared in front of Su Songming. So what if you have 11 spirit stones? I don't believe that you can have so many. The final winner will still be me. At this moment, Su Songming's expression was sinister. He simply threw the words that he had just said to the back of his mind. My friend, you have just said that if this gentleman can take out 11 spirit stones, you will give the fire plume flower to him. At the same time, you will also give him these 10 spirit stones. However, at this moment, the elder on the auction stage suddenly spoke. An invisible pressure spread out and suppressed Su Songming, who didn't care about anything else. Humph! Under the coercion of this pressure, Su Songming couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. However, he immediately gritted his teeth and his gaze fell on the elder on the auction stage. Elder, this is a matter between me and him. Elder shouldn't interfere. When he said these words, Su Songming's aura was clearly reduced. It wasn't for any other reason but because the elder on the auction stage was terrifyingly powerful. I shouldn't interfere in the matters between the two of you. However, this is the territory of the spatial auction. I have the right to control everything that happens here. Since you have already said those words, you should abide by them. Otherwise, I will use the name of the spatial auction to expel you from here forever. You will never be able to participate in the void auction again. The elder's words caused Su Songming's expression to change drastically. He didn't expect that this fellow would appear out of nowhere. In this way, not only would he not be able to obtain the fire plume flower, he would also have to give away the spirit stones that he had painstakingly accumulated to someone else. Most importantly, this person was someone that he couldn't wait to grind into dust. Just thinking about this caused a ball of anger to rise in Su Songming's heart. Chapter 734. In the end, due to the elder's appearance, even though Su Songming was extremely unwilling, he still sat down angrily. At the same time, other than the 10 spirit stones required to purchase the fire plume flower, the remaining 10 spirit stones also belonged to Xiao Yan. This was because he had said that as long as Xiao Yan was able to produce 11 spirit stones, the fire plume flower and the spirit stones would be gifted to Xiao Yan. This was something that Su Songming had personally said in front of so many people. Naturally, he could not go back on his words. Of course, the most important reason was because of the elder on the auction stage. Just like what the elder had said, he had the authority to manage any affairs in the Void Auction House. With just a word from him, Su Songming would never be able to participate in the Void Auction House in the future. Regarding this point, Su Songming did not have any doubts in his heart. After going through the intense competition previously, Su Songming clearly knew that the Void Auction House was hiding a huge amount of power. If there was an opportunity in the future, he would definitely not miss it. It was also because of this that if he wanted to participate in the Void Auction House in the future, he must not offend the people in the Void Auction House. Although Su Songming was now a rank 3 alchemist, he also understood that his status as a rank 3 alchemist was nothing in the eyes of these fellows. As for Xiao Yan's side, after obtaining the fire plume flower, Xiao Yan was already satisfied. The other 10 spirit stones were gifted to the Void Auction House by Xiao Yan in his own name. Of course, the Void Auction House did not lack these spirit stones. However, Xiao Yan's actions would make them feel good about him. At least, he would not be hated like Su Songming. On the auction stage, the elder kept the 20 spirit stones that were flying towards him. The smile on his aged face became even more amiable. However, all of this was directed towards Xiao Yan. Although Su Songming was the owner of these spirit stones, he was the previous owner. 20 spirit stones to the Void Auction House was not considered a lot, but it was also not considered a small amount. To them, 20 spiritual stones were insignificant. However, to ordinary people, 20 spiritual stones might be more than what they had accumulated over the years. The value of these spiritual stones could not be measured by mere numbers. On the viewing platform, Xiao Yan returned to his seat and placed the fire plume flower into the jade box that he had prepared beforehand. After keeping it in his storage ring, he waved his hand and the 11 spirit stones that were floating around Xiao Yan entered his storage ring in a flash. Xiao Yan admitted that he was not a stingy person. However, he was far from being generous. The reason why he had handed over the 10 spirit stones to the elder on the auction stage was simply because these spirit stones did not belong to him in his eyes. What he had won from Su Songming was merely the right to use these 10 spirit stones. In Xiao Yan's eyes, the value of these spirit stones no longer mattered. Rather than keeping them, he might as well do them a favor. To put it bluntly, Xiao Yan did not need Su Songming's spirit stones at all. In Xiao Yan's eyes, the latter spirit stones were just like ordinary stones. They were completely worthless. Retracting his thoughts, Xiao Yan's heart finally gradually calmed down at this moment. With the fire plume flower in his hands, this meant that he had basically gathered all the medicinal ingredients needed to refine the ice spirit pill. Now, he only needed to wait for the east wind to arrive before he could begin refining the ice spirit pill. And this east wind was not referring to the ice spirit liquid, but the Bodhi restoration pill. The medicinal ingredients needed to refine the Bodhi restoration pill had already been gathered. Based on Xiao Yan's current medicinal ingredients, he had a total of 4 pills. In other words, Xiao Yan only had 3 chances of failing to refine the Bodhi restoration pill. If he failed the 4th time, then he would have no hope of refining the ice spirit pill. As for the ice spirit pill, even if Xiao Yan was conservative and tried his best to control the amount of medicinal ingredients within an acceptable range, a stalk of fire plume flower could only be used twice at most. Even if it was used together with the other medicinal ingredients, it would still be average. Therefore, even Xiao Yan only had 2 chances to refine the ice spirit pill. Once he failed, it would be impossible for him to gather all the medicinal ingredients needed to refine the ice spirit pill again. On the other side, Su Songming looked at Xiao Yan, who was hiding under a black robe, from afar. Murderous intent gradually gathered in the depths of his turbid old eyes. The person before him had made him lose face time and time again. This kind of humiliation would make him unable to stand in front of others in the future. Once the realm auction ended and he returned to the Alchemist Alliance, this matter would quickly spread. At that time, he would be ridiculed again. How could Su Songming swallow this anger in his heart? Kid, this old man will definitely get revenge for today's humiliation. The other 3 families, Bai family, Hua family and Lin family were also observing the situation. The Bai family and Hua family were not concerned, but the atmosphere on the Lin family's side was somewhat gloomy. Originally, they wanted to give the fire plume flower to Su Songming as a gift. This way, they would be able to quickly improve the relationship between the 2 families. But now, not only did the auction of the fire plume flower meet with a nose full of dust, Su Songming must be extremely dissatisfied with them. Who knew what this old man would do to their Lin family after this matter? Fortunately, as a subordinate faction of the two great families, the Lin family did not have to worry about being targeted by Su Songming's men. After this small interlude, the old man unhurriedly took out another auction item. Regardless of the emotions in the hearts of the few families on the stage, once the auction started, unless it ended, no one would be able to stop it. Very quickly, the atmosphere on the auction stage was once again stirred up as the cheers grew louder. These people could not wait to go up on stage and directly snatch the auction item from the old man's hands. In the auction house, almost everyone's eyes were once again gathered on the auction item. Even the people from the two great families were no exception. Only Xiao Yan was currently lazily leaning against the back of his chair. Under the black robe, his eyes were slightly shut as he waited for the auction to end. With the fire plume flower in his hands, Xiao Yan had already achieved the main purpose of his trip to Xian City. As for the rest, Xiao Yan did not have the mood to care about them. He would let these lunatics fight for those items. As time passed, the auction became more and more popular. Even the value of the auction items on the stage rapidly increased. In the end, it was even related to spirit stones. A few of the precious auction items had already reached the stage where they could only be auctioned with spirit stones. This caused the majority of the people present to feel a great sense of regret in their hearts. At the same time, the expressions on their faces became even more fervent. Everyone, it's not that you don't know, but this year's auction is already nearing its end. I believe that most of the people present here are still not satisfied. Don't worry, our auction will be held in other places. However, if there are any friends who are interested, you can still participate. On the auction stage, the smile on the old man's face became increasingly radiant due to the consecutive high bids. At this moment, the old man revealed a warm smile to everyone present for the first time. Immediately, the old man's figure, which was standing at the edge of the auction stage, slowly retreated and walked to the center of the auction stage. His gaze once again swept across the entire auction house. Only then did he raise his hands and clap 3 times in succession with a face full of smiles. Clap, clap, clap. In the next instant, the auction stage beneath the old man's feet suddenly shook. At the same time, the crowd on the high platform saw that, other than the area where the old man was standing, the auction stage around him had suddenly split apart. The originally complete auction stage had split into 4 pieces. Including the piece beneath the old man's feet, there were 5 pieces. The space that had been split apart was like a bottomless abyss. It was completely dark and empty. Soon after, 4 rays of light shot out from the crack. They were like 4 light walls that swiftly wrapped around the entire auction stage. The old man was also surrounded by the light walls. The appearance of this scene caused most of the people present to be startled. Their eyes involuntarily revealed a surprised glint. The words of the old man earlier did not mean that the auction had ended. From the looks of the current situation, the item that was about to be auctioned next seemed to be a little unusual. Just from looking at this light wall, the elite Do Di present did not dare to underestimate it. Even the representatives of the 2 large clans, Bai Ying and Hua Ting, did not have the confidence to break this light wall. Is it finally about to appear? Hua Ting's shriveled hands slowly tightened under his wide sleeves. Hua Yuning by the side also focused her attention. Her gaze was fixed on the old man on the stage. The father and son of the Bai clan on the other side were also doing the same. Although the gazes of the other people were still heated, they did not know anything about the next auction item. Other than being curious in their hearts, they did not dare to have any other thoughts. Everyone, the next item is the final auction item of this auction. It is also the finale item of our auction house. The expression of the old man within the stone stage that was wrapped by the light wall gradually became solemn. His gaze slowly swept over the entire place. His eyes were sharp, causing the hearts of those who saw it to involuntarily tighten. Sensing the change in the atmosphere of the auction ground, Xiao Yan, who was resting with his eyes shut while waiting for the auction to end, could not help but slowly open his eyes. His gaze was surprised as he looked at the auction ground at this moment. Immediately, the old man withdrew his gaze when everyone's gazes gathered on him. Powerful Do Qi slowly surged within his body. After which, a deep old voice was slowly spat out from his mouth. Everyone has also seen that the light walls that have risen from all 4 sides are something that even an elite Do Di would not be able to easily break. Therefore, if there is anyone present who has other thoughts, it is best that they do not think too much about it. Although everyone present was in the endless empty space, the old man still spoke out to warn them. This was also to eliminate any unnecessary trouble. Seeing that everyone present were looking at each other, the old man's gaze once again swept over the entire place. He withdrew his gaze and paused for a moment. Only then did he use his feet to gently step on the ground 3 times. Soon after, another light shot out from the crack line in front of him. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a completely dark black ancient scroll. Finale auction item, Shang Class Chi Method. Chapter 735. Saint Tier Cultivation Method. When these words left his mouth, the expressions of everyone present instantly changed. Some people were even stunned by these words, and some people looked at each other suspiciously, as if they were doubting their own ears, afraid that they had misheard and would attract mocking gazes. However, regardless of whether they were looking left and right or were filled with shock, when they once again looked at the old man in the auction hall, the answer in their hearts was confirmed. At this moment, the old man was holding a pitch-black scroll in one hand and holding it in the air above his palm. His old eyes were calm and collected as his turbid eyes swept across the hall once again. Everyone, you didn't hear wrongly. The final item of the auction is this Saint Tier Cultivation Method. Hua! After hearing the old man's confirmation, the crowd no longer had any doubts. A clamor immediately sounded in the auction hall. The noise was so loud that it seemed as if the roof of the auction hall would be forcefully lifted off. Saint Tier Cultivation Method. Is it really a Saint Tier Cultivation Method? I never imagined that a Saint Tier Cultivation Method would appear in the Western region. For a time, voices filled with shock continuously sounded in the auction hall. A Saint Tier Cultivation Method was a super cultivation method that stood at the peak of all cultivation methods. Apart from Saint Tier taboo cultivation methods, no other cultivation method could compare to it. As for Saint Class cultivation techniques, they were extremely rare even in the entire Yuanwu continent. In fact, in the past few hundred years, there had never been any news of a Saint Class cultivation technique appearing anywhere. Just this point alone was enough to show how rare Saint Class cultivation techniques were. Right now, a Saint Tier cultivation method had actually appeared in the Western region, which was publicly recognized as the most barren place in the continent. It was inevitable that people would not dare to easily believe this. Since there were people who didn't believe it, there were naturally people who believed it. For example, the Bai clan's father and son and the Hua clan's people had come for the Saint Tier cultivation method from the very beginning. Now that the cultivation method had appeared, they were naturally overjoyed. This is a Saint Tier cultivation method. Hua Ting and Hua Yu stared at the ancient black scroll in front of the old man. Their breathing quickened. Not to mention the Hua clan, even in the entire Western region, it was impossible for any force to possess a Saint Tier cultivation method. However, such a cultivation method had actually appeared before their eyes. If they could obtain it, then their clan would definitely undergo a qualitative change. They might even be able to create the 5th force in the Western region. Of course, the Hua clan and the Bai clan hadn't thought of that yet. Their only hope was to obtain the Saint Tier cultivation technique first. Compared to any other item that had been auctioned off before this, the value of the Saint Grade cultivation method alone was enough to crush all the other items that had been auctioned off before this. Even the father and son of the Bai clan, who were originally calm, couldn't help but reveal a trace of excitement on their faces. One could imagine just how great of a surprise this Saint Grade cultivation technique brought to them. Xiao Yan focused his eyes and looked down from the tall platform. His gaze immediately locked onto the black-colored scroll. Surprise involuntarily flashed across his eyes. A Saint Tier cultivation method. How could a Saint Tier cultivation method appear in a barren land like the Western region? Unlike the people from the other 2 clans, Xiao Yan's heart was filled with suspicion. Everyone in the mainland knew how precious a Saint Tier cultivation method was. Who would be willing to auction it off if they could get their hands on it? Even if the cultivation method's attribute was different from one's own cultivation attribute, it could be left for the younger generation to use. In Xiao Yan's opinion, no one would be stupid enough to auction off a Saint Tier cultivation method unless the person didn't care about a Saint Tier cultivation method at all. But that was impossible. Even if the owner of this cultivation method had an even more profound cultivation method, no matter how powerful he wouldn't easily auction off a Saint Tier cultivation method. Xiao Yan would definitely not believe that there was nothing fishy going on. At this moment, the old man in the middle of the auction stage opened his mouth once again. Everyone, before the auction begins, this old man has one more thing to say. When the old man opened his mouth, the crowd immediately turned their gazes over. Now, every word this old man said was related to a saint-tier cultivation method. Naturally, no one dared to miss out on the old man's words. Even the people from the other two clans didn't dare to. When he saw the crowd's gazes, the old man slightly nodded his head. He slowly extended 2 fingers and pointed at the black scroll floating in mid-air. His fingers gently moved left and right twice. Immediately, the crowd saw the black scroll slowly unfurl under the old man's control. Everyone, this cultivation method is indeed a saint-tier cultivation method. Moreover, according to our auction house's research, this cultivation method is a middle saint-tier cultivation method. However, the one in our hands is merely a remnant. The old man solemnly opened his mouth. At the same time, the black scroll in front of him slowly unfurled. Immediately, what appeared in front of the crowd's eyes was an incomplete piece of the cultivation method. In the auction house, the crowd focused their gazes. Within the black scroll, there was still a piece of black parchment. Only when the scroll was completely unfurled did the crowd see a small piece of palm-sized bronze parchment. It was tightly attached to the black scroll and was preserved in a corner of the entire scroll. From this point of view, one could tell with a single glance that this scroll was indeed just a fragment. A remnant. When this scene appeared, it caused many people to be instantly stunned. The Hua clan and Bai clan members also revealed disappointed expressions on their faces. Regarding this saint-tier cultivation method, they only knew that it was a saint-tier cultivation method. What they didn't expect was that this cultivation method was actually a remnant. A mere remnant. Even if they obtained it, what use would it be? At the very most, it could only be displayed as a decoration. If they wanted to gain enlightenment from it, it would be even more difficult. When they thought of this, the originally excited Bai clan and Hua clan members immediately lost interest in this saint-tier cultivation method. Damn it, this spatial auction actually dares to deceive our Hua clan. What saint-tier cultivation method? It's simply a remnant. It's just a useless piece of trash. Hua Yu tightly clenched his teeth. His eyebrows were deeply furrowed like a hemp rope. His eyes were filled with anger. Forget it. Forget it. It's not that they lied to us. The cultivation technique is indeed a sage-level cultivation technique. It's just that we didn't expect that it was just a fragment of a scroll. Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. They thought that we would lose our sense of propriety because of the sage-level cultivation technique. We can't blame them for this. It's just a pity that we should have paid a price to get that monster core. At this very moment, Hua Ting's heart could not help but feel resentful. However, things had already developed to this point. Even if he was angry, it was useless. When he thought back to the monster core from before, his heart was filled with anger. In the end, they did not obtain anything. This trip to the spatial auction could be said to be returning empty-handed. This won't do. If we return empty-handed, the clan head will definitely be angry. Even if we can't obtain the complete saint-tier cultivation method, if we can bring this remnant back, it can barely be considered as completing our mission. Hua Ting thought in his heart. He lifted his gaze and looked at the elder on the auction stage below. He cupped his hands together and slowly said, "Senior, please make your bid." When these words came out, everyone present was surprised. It was only a remnant scroll. If they could not obtain the complete cultivation method, it would be useless even if they bought it. They did not expect the Hua clan to still want to auction it. Could it be that they were muddle-headed? The Bai clan's father and son frowned slightly. Since they already knew that it was a remnant scroll, they naturally lost interest. However, what surprised them was that the Hua clan was not willing to give up. However, after thinking about it, Bai Ying understood. You want to take it back to complete your mission? Then you can have it. Bai Ying secretly sneered in his heart. His gaze turned back to the scroll, and a trace of regret flashed across his eyes. It's a pity that it's only a remnant scroll. If it was complete, then in the future. On the auction stage, the elder was slightly surprised when he heard Hua Ting's words. He originally thought that no one would bid again. He did not expect Hua Ting to make a bid at this moment. The elder's eyes flickered. There were only 2 reasons why Hua Ting made a bid. First, he wanted to take it back to put on a show. Second, the Hua clan had something related to the saint-tier cultivation method fragment on the scroll. Could it be The elder narrowed his eyes. However, in an instant, thousands of thoughts flashed through his mind. In the end, he shook his head. Regardless of whether there were or not, this was not something he should be thinking about right now. He was the person in charge of the auction house. After so many years of auctioning, he had sold at least 8,000 if not 10,000 items. He only knew that his mission was to successfully sell the auction items in his hands. The old man took in a deep breath and calmed himself down. After which, he slowly lifted his head. A smile surfaced on his aged face as he faced Ting and slowly said, "Brother Hua, I'm not going to let you go. Because this Saint Tier cultivation method is only a remnant scroll, its value has been greatly reduced. Therefore, our auction house has decided to set the starting price at 50 spirit stones. Each bid must not be less than 10 spirit stones." When these words were spoken, many people's expressions changed. 50 spirit stones was only the price of a remnant scroll of a Saint Tier cultivation method. At the same time, 50 spirit stones was the highest price in the entire auction. Even though it was just a fragment, the price was already as high as 50 spirit stones. It was hard to imagine how valuable a complete saint-level technique would be. Of course, these people did not think too much about it. This was because they did not think that a true Saint Tier cultivation method could not be measured by price. This was because even the lowest level Saint Tier cultivation method could create countless powerful individuals. How could this be measured by spirit stones? Alright, 50 spirit stones. 50 spirit stones it is. Hua Ting's expression darkened. Even though he was unhappy, he still gritted his teeth and said it. On the other side, Bai Ying could not help but frown slightly when he saw this. The corners of his mouth curled into an indescribable smile. Just as he was about to speak, another voice suddenly sounded from the other side of the high platform. "I bid 60 spirit stones." Chapter 736. The instant the black-colored scroll was completely opened on the auction stage below, Xiao Yan's originally expressionless face on the high platform suddenly underwent a change. At the moment when the black-colored scroll in front of the old man was opened and the Shang-class Qi method fragment was exposed to the air, Xiao Yan clearly sensed that something that appeared inconspicuous, but was extremely important to Xiao Yan, within his storage ring, began to tremble slightly at this moment. It was the wisp of Xiao Xian's soul that was behaving strangely. This is... Xiao Yan's heart was greatly shaken. His entire body and even his soul involuntarily trembled. The muscles all over his body suddenly tightened at this moment. Even his repeatedly beating heart paused as though it had been petrified. Xiao Yan's breathing paused. It was as though his life had stopped in an instant. Only that pair of pitch-black eyes gradually surged with astonishing excitement. Other than that, there was also shock. Xiao Xian, who had always been in a state of confusion between life and death, actually moved at this moment. This made Xiao Yan, who had always been looking forward to it, extremely excited. In an instant, emotions gushed out like a volcanic eruption. When Xiao Yan came back to his senses, his eyes had turned crimson red. Tears of excitement gathered in his eyes and almost gushed out. Ever since Xiao Yan began his journey, there had been many times when he was excited. However, there were very few times when he was truly moved from the bottom of his soul. He had cried for his father. He had cried for his teacher. However, there had never been a time when he was as excited as he was now. It was difficult to express such emotions with simple words. Xiao Xian, ancestor. Xiao Yan had always held a respectful attitude towards Xiao Xian from the beginning. Whether it was the latter's strength or his great love for his family, Xiao Yan had always been extremely respectful towards him. It could be said that Xiao Xian was the most important person to Xiao Yan apart from a few others. In essence, Xiao Yan's current strength also included Xiao Xian's sacrifice. "Brat, what has happened?" The sudden change in Xiao Yan's emotions caused Gu Yu, who had been in a deep slumber, to be startled. Xiao Yan's emotions could directly affect him. However, Gu Yu was unaware of what had happened in Xiao Yan's storage ring. Ancestor Xiao Xian, he moved. What? Xiao Yan's heart was filled with uncontrollable excitement as he spoke. Gu Yu's attention suddenly shook after his words sounded. He was even more aware of Xiao Xian's situation than Xiao Yan. In Xiao Xian's current condition, it was impossible for him to act on his own. Unless there was something that was attracting him. In an instant, Gu Yu's mind spun rapidly, and he quickly thought of something. In the Yuanwu continent, There was likely only one thing that could cause Xiao Xian's soul. Could it be the Gui Yuan skill? Gu Yu's heart shook once again when he thought of this. His heart was filled with incomparable surprise. Xiao Yan, or rather Xiao Xian, was too lucky. The Gui Yuan skill was something that had long disappeared from the Yuan-Wu continent. For thousands of years, many people had tried to find the whereabouts of the Gui Yuan skill, but they had ended up empty-handed. Gu Yu did not expect Xiao Xian to coincidentally stumble upon it. Gu Yu only noticed Xiao Yan's current location after having thought this through in his heart. The auction hall, huh? Gu Yu muttered in his heart. Soon after, his eyes were like sharp blades as they swiftly locked onto the black scroll in front of the old man in the middle of the auction hall. That is... Gu Yu once again fell into deep thought. At the same time, shock surged from the bottom of his heart. Brat, that chi method. It is a Shang-class chi method. Unfortunately, it is incomplete. Xiao Yan quickly opened his mouth to explain after Gu Yu's words sounded. Although he was a little doubtful about Gu Yu's question, Xiao Yan did not hide anything. There was no need for him to hide anything. Shang-class chi method? Gu Yu's heart shook. At the same time, he became even more certain of his guess. Shang-class chi method. Gui Yuan's skill. Since it was a Shang-class chi method that had appeared in the auction hall and caused Xiao Xian's soul to fluctuate, this incomplete Shang-class chi method was definitely the Gui Yuan skill. Brat, you must obtain this incomplete chi method. It is very likely that this is the reason for your ancestors' unusual reaction. Gu Yu's tone was extremely solemn as he warned Xiao Yan in his heart. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face suddenly changed. From Gu Yu's words, it was not difficult to tell that this incomplete Shang-class chi method was extremely important to him. Moreover, it seemed to be related to his ancestor, Xiao Xian. Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little surprised when he thought of this. He could not figure out how Xiao Xian was related to this incomplete chi method. Just what exactly was this chi method? In an instant, numerous doubtful questions continuously rose in Xiao Yan's heart like a small stream of flowing water. On the other hand, Hua Ting, who had already thought of a plan, announced his price. 50 spirit stones. Everyone, this mister is willing to bid 50 spiritual stones. Is there anyone who wishes to bid a higher price? The old man stood at the middle of the auction stage, where only a stone pillar remained. His bright eyes slowly swept over the entire place. His gaze paused on the Bai clan and Xiao Yan. From the way he thought about it, it was likely that only these two people had the ability to compete with Hua Ting. On the high platform, the corners of Bai Ying's mouth slowly curled into a cold smile. Now that this chi method was incomplete, it no longer had any value to him. However, since Hua Ting wanted to buy it, Bai Ying naturally could not let him have it so easily. However, just as Bai Ying was about to open his mouth, Xiao Yan on the auction stage suppressed the excitement in his heart. He raised his head and revealed half of his young face under the black robe. Both of his eyes were overflowing with brilliance as he stared at the black-colored scroll in the auction ground. His voice was clear and powerful as he opened his mouth and spoke. I bid 60 spiritual stones. His voice had just sounded when numerous sharp gazes shot toward Xiao Yan like arrows in the enormous auction ground. Soon after, a surprised expression once again surfaced on everyone's faces. It was unexpected that the person who had bid this time around would actually be this mysterious fellow. On the tall platform, Hua Ting involuntarily frowned when he heard these words. Astonishment swiftly flashed across his elderly face. He did not expect that this mysterious little brat would actually dare to snatch the item that his Hua clan had set their eyes on. Wasn't his courage a little too great? Chapter 737. Xiao Yan's figure stood tall and straight on the high platform in the huge auction ground. Countless number of people shot their gazes over. Surprise surfaced in their eyes. No one would have thought that this mysterious black-robed person would actually clash with the Hua clan after repeatedly provoking the Lin clan and Su Songming. This was really a case of a newborn calf not being afraid of a tiger. Did he not know that the Hua clan was one of the 4 great clans? This guy really doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Does he think that he can do whatever he wants just because he's a rank 3 alchemist? Who is the Hua clan? It's one of the 4 strongest clans under the Sky Sword sect, and it's ranked 2nd. Daring to go against them is simply courting death. That's right. In the entire western region, other than the people from the 4 great sects, Which faction can fight with them? He even dares to provoke the Hua clan. Is he not intentionally seeking death? I think that he is about to suffer a calamity. In an instant, numerous pitiful or disdainful words were emitted from the crowd. Just from those words, one could hear a cold laughter. Even though this was the case, some fear involuntarily surged into these people's eyes when they looked at Xiao Yan. No matter how one put it, Xiao Yan's strength was still displayed. Even Lin Zheong, who was an elite Do Di, was no match for him. In that case, how could they, who were mere Bandi, be his opponents? These people were all existences that were like vultures. They were extremely lively and did not dare to touch anyone. Normally, they would act like ducks that were passing by. However, when they saw someone who was about to die, they would immediately reveal their true colors. They were greedy and timid. Occasionally, they would grumble a little. It was as though they were excited after snatching a piece of meat. They were even scarier than scum. Haha, what a group of cowards. If you have the ability, why don't you discuss it face to face? Why do you need to exchange words here and there? After all, you are just a group of small fries. You are destined to stay in this small western region for the rest of your lives. When someone laughed coldly in disdain, there would naturally be people who felt admiration. Everyone knew that the four great clans were extremely arrogant and despotic. Naturally, there was no lack of people who hated them. The strong man who spoke just now was such a person. Humph. We're just stating facts. The strength of the four great clans is tyrannical. In the entire western region, besides the four great sects, there's absolutely no other power that dares to rashly provoke them. Immediately, words that were filled with flattery swiftly spread across the tall platform. Among these people, there were naturally quite a number of people who hoped to be like the Lin family and be able to rely on the four great clans. In order to express their goodwill, every word that they spoke was naturally in favor of the four great clans. Haha, no one dares to challenge you? Truly a bunch of idiots. Have you all forgotten that not long ago, the four great clans were almost completely wiped out in the desolate ancient ruins? If it wasn't for their good luck, they would have already died in the desolate ancient ruins. Furthermore, the person who caused all of this was merely a 6-star half-martial emperor. Now, you all are saying that no one provoked him? What an enormous joke. Clamor. A single stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. In an instant, this person's words were like an invisible storm that swept through the entire auction house. In the auction house, these words reverberated in the ears of everyone present. Even if some of the people present inadvertently thought about it, the information about that person was like a drum that reverberated in their minds in an instant. Xiao Yan, it's Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan. In an instant, Xiao Yan's battle achievements swiftly swept across the auction ground. Everyone's mind involuntarily recalled that legendary person. Until now, there was not a single person present who had truly seen him. However, these people were already familiar with the latter's battle achievements. It was not an exaggeration to say that they could recite them backwards. He was currently the public enemy of the entire western region. Everyone wished that they could immediately capture him when they saw him. However, until now, even the elite Do Di who had met him were unable to do anything to him. As for an ordinary Bandi, they would not even be able to last a single exchange in his hands. They would not even be able to block a single punch from him. This was especially the case during the battle at Coldstream City back then. Xiao Yan had fought against 100 people by himself. He had relied on his own strength to fight against an entire city of people. These various things were deeply imprinted in the minds of these people. Even though they had never seen it with their own eyes, it was something that they would never forget. After the news regarding Xiao Yan spread throughout the auction ground, the expressions of some people in various parts of the auction ground involuntarily changed. A couple of suspicious gazes involuntarily landed on Xiao Yan, who was currently standing on the tall stage. At this moment, the old man on the auction stage was frowning as he looked at Xiao Yan through the light wall in front of him. Other than the suspicion in his old eyes, there was also a surprise hidden within them. According to what these people have said, could he be Xiao Yan? On the other side, Hua Ting and Hua Yuning revealed solemn expressions as they stared at the black-robed human figure in the auction ground. Their hands slowly tightened under their sleeves. If the person in front of them was really Xiao Yan, it was likely that they would not return empty-handed from this trip to Xian City. Hua Yuning's eyes stared intently at the black-robed human figure. A murderous intent gradually surged from deep within her eyes. Her younger brother had died because of this. Hua Yuning would definitely avenge her brother once this person landed in her hands. Young master. I know. Let's not act recklessly first. I have already sent out the news. It is likely that the clan has already received it. Our people should be arriving soon after the auction is over. Compared to before, Hua Yuning was much calmer when faced with this matter. Hua Ting nodded slightly. Regardless of whether this person was really Xiao Yan or not, they had to give it a try. If it wasn't, then so be it, but if it really was Xiao Yan, then they could not let him go no matter what. On the other side, the father and son from the Bai clan were staring at Xiao Yan with various expressions, especially Bai Ying. He had personally sensed the energy that Xiao Yan had emitted. Even a simple recollection of the trip to the desolate ancient remains would cause his heart to involuntarily tremble. That kind of power was simply too terrifying. It was also because of this that the gaze she used to look at Xiao Yan did not contain the slightest trace of enmity. Of course, this was perhaps because the two of them had a secret cooperative relationship. Beside Bai Ying, Bai Zhan immediately noticed the change in his father's expression. He did not need to think too much and immediately understood this. From the looks of it, the reason father revealed that kind of expression earlier was likely because he had sensed his qi. Xiao Yan, who exactly are you? Chapter 738. Xiao Yan was naturally able to sense the change in the atmosphere of the auction ground in front of the eyes of tens of thousands of people. Although most people held a surprised and disdainful attitude toward him, there was still a small group of people who began to doubt his identity. After all, the strength of this black-robed person who had appeared in front of them at this moment was coincidentally that of a bandit. Moreover, from the fact that he was able to defeat Lin Zheong, his fighting strength was clearly at the Dodi class. The most coincidental thing was that he was also a rank 3 alchemist. These 2 points coincided and he was also a young man. Those elite Dodi present were even certain that this black-robed person, who was still standing alone in the arena, was definitely Xiao Yan. There was no mistake about it. Damn it, this group of people who only know how to play tricks. They are really careless. It is unexpected that my identity has been exposed because of all of you. Xiao Yan knit his brows tightly under the black robe. His heart involuntarily felt a solemnness. Just a moment ago, his enormous spiritual strength had clearly sensed an unusual energy ripple spreading from the position of the 2 people from the Hua clan. If he had guessed correctly, they were definitely reporting to their clan. It was likely that the people from the Hua clan would arrive as soon as the auction ended. Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily felt even more solemn when he thought of this point. His originally tightly knit brows were tightly knit together at this moment. Xian City was originally the territory of both the Hua clan and the Bai clan. Exposing his identity here was no different from sending a lamb into a tiger's mouth. Once the experts from the 2 clans gathered here and formed an encirclement, Xiao Yan would not be able to escape even if he died. Xiao Yan did indeed have a cooperative relationship with the Bai clan. However, no one could guarantee that the Bai clan would not secretly act for Xiao Yan in this kind of situation. If they did, it would undoubtedly be a great help to Xiao Yan. If they did not, Xiao Yan would definitely become a turtle in a jar, unable to escape even if he had wings. Now, I can only hope that the people from the Hua clan will not arrive after the auction ends. Xiao Yan helplessly sighed in his heart. He could only quietly hope. After all, the spatial auction was not an ordinary place. How could Xiao Yan leave just because he wanted to? Other than anxiously waiting in this place, Xiao Yan had no other choice. On the other side, the father and son from the Bai clan were also quietly communicating. Father, have you sensed it? Yes, they have likely already recognized his identity and have already gathered the experts within the clan. Bai Ying quietly nodded his head when he heard Bai Zhan's words. He was constantly paying attention to the little of the Hua clan's actions. His heart involuntarily tightened as he began to hesitate. Xiao Yan was an enemy to the 4 great sections. He was an existence that they could not easily let go of. The ancient heavenly tomb was far too important to the 4 great sections. They had to capture Xiao Yan no matter what. However, Xiao Yan was neither an enemy nor a friend to their Bai clan. However, he was an existence that they had to keep alive. This was because only with Xiao Yan's survival would they be able to divert the attention of the 4 great sections. This way, with Xiao Yan holding them back, it would naturally be much easier for the Bai clan to act. Xiao Yan was an important key to the rise of the Bai clan. No matter what, nothing could happen to him. At the very least, before the Bai clan had the ability to separate from the Heavenly Sword sect, Xiao Yan could not die. Father, now that the Hua clan has already made their move, should we also? No, wait a little longer. We have to wait a little longer. If we gather the clan members at this time, he will have no chance to escape if both of our forces arrive. We must give him a chance to escape. Let's send out a message before the auction ends. Yes, Father. Bai Zhan nodded and kept a jade slip in his hand under his sleeve into his storage ring. Father, what should we do if we run into him? Bai Zhan suddenly frowned after keeping the jade strip and turned his head to ask Bai Ying. Bai Zhan was naturally worried that after the auction ended, even if the Hua clan members did not arrive, what would they do if they discovered Xiao Yan's identity? It was impossible for them to not attack Xiao Yan. If they did so, their Bai clan would be targeted by the Heavenly Sword sect. Once they lost the trust of the Heavenly Sword sect, they would be suspected of anything they did in the future, much less strengthen the Bai clan. However, if they were to attack, with 2 3-star Do Di and Hua Yuning, whose strength had already reached the initial 2-star Do Di level, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have difficulty dealing with the 3 of them. If something were to happen to Xiao Yan, it would be troublesome. Let's wait and see when the time comes. In short, we will try our best to hold back. Whether he can leave or not will depend on him. Bai Ying frowned slightly. How could he have imagined that Xiao Yan would actually dare to come to the territory of their 4 great clans with such great fanfare? Now, he was actually sitting in the same auction ground as them. This was really shocking. The auction continued. However, the atmosphere in the place gradually changed without anyone noticing. This Mr. has bid 60 spirit stones. May I know if there is anyone present who is willing to bid a higher price? The old man's eyes slowly swept over the entire place from the auction stage. His sharp eyes paused on a couple of spots in the auction ground. This was especially the case when they swept past Xiao Yan. The old man's eyes flickered. Immediately, he withdrew his gaze and slowly opened his mouth to speak. Regardless of what happened, no one could stop the auction from continuing as usual. The old me will bid 70 spirit stones. Hua Ting once again spoke from the tall stage. Since he had decided to keep Xiao Yan here, he would naturally try his best to delay time before the experts from the Hua clan arrived. Delaying the auction was undoubtedly the best and most effective method. 80 spirit stones. Xiao Yan's brows were tightly knit together. While his heart felt increasingly solemn, he did not dare to hesitate. He was clearly aware of the latter's intentions. If he were to hesitate at this moment, would he not be taking the initiative to push himself into the fire pit? 90 spirit stones. Xiao Yan did not dare to hesitate. On the other hand, Hua Ting had a leisurely look on his face. Ever since he had confirmed Xiao Yan's identity, he no longer planned to compete for the auction of this remnant scroll. After all, as long as he could capture Xiao Yan and bring him back to the Hua clan, even if this remnant scroll ended up in his hands now, it would only be a temporary safekeeping. In any case, it would return to the Hua clan sooner or later. Naturally, it did not matter where it was now. Time passed bit by bit. The price of the auction had increased from the initial 50 spirit stones to 180 spirit stones. Moreover, the time that had passed was actually 1 hour. Hua Ting was intentionally stalling for time. Almost everyone present could see this. However, there were very few people who knew the truth. A strange atmosphere pervaded the huge auction house. Everyone's eyes were suspiciously looking at the 2 people who were increasing the bid. No one knew what exactly was going on. The old me will bid 190 spirit stones. 200 spirit stones. The auction ground was silent for a long time. Finally, everyone heard Hua Ting's leisurely bid. The instant Hua Ting's word sounded, Xiao Yan's bid was immediately heard from the auction ground. Hua Ting was helpless. According to Gu Yu, this Saint-class Qi method remnant scroll was extremely useful to Xiao Yan. Hence, no matter what, Xiao Yan had to obtain this Qi method remnant scroll today. Otherwise, he would have allowed Hua Ting to take it away and would not have delayed until now. Even the old man on the auction stage could not help but frown when he saw this scene. However, he felt somewhat helpless in his heart. Hua Ting had an extremely accurate grasp of time. Every time he would bid within a limited time. He would neither exceed nor exceed the time limit. On the other hand, Xiao Yan was different. In order to end this battle as soon as possible, he would always hurriedly raise the price the moment Hua Ting bid. It was as if Hua Ting had unlimited time, while he only had 1 or 2 seconds. As Xiao Yan opened his mouth once again, his loud voice reverberated throughout the auction ground. Everyone present was already intimidated by this strange aura. They held their breaths and carefully waited for the outcome of the two people. On the auction stage below, the old man's expression was a little gloomy. He did not expect Hua Ting to take advantage of their spatial auction ground. Unfortunately, Hua Ting had a legitimate reason for doing so. Even the old man could not do anything about it. A pair of old eyes gloomily swept across Hua Ting's body. At the same time, a cold glint inadvertently flashed across the old man's eyes. Xiao Yan's body stood upright on the high stage. He had already been standing there for a full hour. Even though his body was not tired, his heart was enduring an enormous amount of pressure. Time passed by minute. Finally, the silence in the auction ground continued and broke through the agreed time period. Hua Ting did not speak again. At this moment, everyone in the auction ground slowly heaved a sigh of relief. Soft cries rang out clearly in the auction ground at this moment. Xiao Yan's heart trembled slightly at this moment. He suddenly raised his head and his gaze instantly fell on the black scroll in front of the old man on the auction stage. A complicated expression flashed across his pitch-black eyes. Today, for the sake of this cultivation technique, he was afraid that he would have to leave his life here. Phew! But fortunately, this cultivation method had finally fallen into his hands. Congratulations to this mister for successfully auctioning off this year's final auction item. At the same time, the old man on the auction stage finally heaved a long sigh of relief. This annoying auction was finally over. Due to the uniqueness of the auction item, the exchange this time was different from the previous ones. Xiao Yan descended from the high stage and was allowed to enter the light wall by the old man. A huge curtain suddenly fell from the sky and covered the entire auction stage. Due to the uniqueness of the curtain, the people on the auction stage were unable to clearly see the contents of the curtain. This was the rule of previous auctions. Some of the people present were very clear about this. Hence, they did not have any other thoughts. On the other hand, the members of the Hua clan did not wish for Xiao Yan to disappear from their sight before they caught him. Even though it was only a short period of time, a sense of unease still rose in their hearts. Chapter 739. When the enormous black curtain was pulled apart, 2 human figures slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. One of them was an old man wearing a white robe. He was the auctioneer. The other person was wearing a black robe. His aura was completely hidden under the black robe. With the cover of the black robe, no one present was able to detect his aura. Hua Ting, who was on the tall platform, slowly sighed in relief when he saw the appearance of these 2 people. As long as Xiao Yan was still around, everything would be under his control. Humph, Xiao Yan, let's see where you can escape to this time around. Hua Ting quietly cursed in his heart. The shriveled hand under his sleeve slowly tightened. Both of his eyes revealed a cold glint. Beside him, Hua Yuning's eyes were also staring intently at Xiao Yan, who was currently being watched by tens of thousands of people. However, other thoughts rose in her heart. Although the Sky Absolute Steps was only a human-class Agility Do technique, its value far surpassed some Spirit-class Agility Do techniques. Under the same class, the advantage that the Sky Absolute Steps could display was something that other Do techniques could not compare with. This point had already been proven by Xiao Yan. It was also because of this that Hua Yuning began to yearn for the Sky Absolute Steps in her heart. If he was able to obtain the Sky Absolute Steps and carefully practice it, he was confident that he would not need to fear anyone of the same class after successfully mastering the Sky Absolute Steps. He was even confident that he could rely on his current strength to fight with Zhuolin. This was the might of the Sky Absolute Steps. Various Do techniques had their own advantages. Regardless of whether it was speed or strength, as long as one had an advantage, one would have a chance of winning in a battle. The advantage of the Sky Absolute Steps was something that most Agility Do techniques could not compare with. According to its actual effect, the level of the Sky Absolute Steps was far from being as simple as a human-class Do technique. On the tall platform on the other side, the eyes of the Bai clan's father and son had also landed on Xiao Yan. Bai Ying nodded gently and indicated to Bai Zhan by his side. The latter understood. His hand under his sleeves trembled gently and a jade strip appeared in his palm. Soon after, it was instantly crushed by Bai Zhan. The moment the jade strip exploded, an invisible energy ripple quietly spread out of the auction house. Not long after this invisible energy spread out, the old man on the auction stage below raised his pair of bright old eyes slightly. His gaze instantly landed on by Jean. Soon after, he withdrew his gaze. He laughed coldly in his heart and did not say anything else. Thank you all for coming to this year's auction. Time is running out, and our auction is coming to an end. I sincerely hope that the friends who have gained something in this auction will be satisfied with this auction. The old man cupped his fists at the crowd and said with a smile. Of course, you don't have to worry if you don't get it this time. You can still participate in the next auction. Before you leave, you can receive a free name card from our auction house. Next time, you can directly enter the auction house with this card. After giving his blessings, the old man changed his tone and used another method of the auction house to deal with those who did not obtain anything. As soon as these words were spoken, most of the people in the auction house who did not obtain anything were pleasantly surprised. They were originally worried that they had wasted 50 spirit stones and did not obtain anything in the end. However, from the looks of it now, that was not necessarily the case. As long as they obtained this name card, they could enter the auction house for free next time. It would not be too late to choose at that time. In this way, it seemed that the 50 spirit stones were not wasted. Seeing the surprised expressions on the faces of the people in the auction house, the old man smiled slightly. He immediately raised his hands and gently pressed the void in front of him. Everyone in the auction house immediately gathered their gazes. Now, I announce that this year's spatial auction in Xian City has come to an end. As soon as the old man finished speaking, everyone in the auction house stood up and walked back the way they came. As for Xiao Yan, he followed at the back of the group. With the old man beside him guarding, no one dared to make a move. Mister, I will be responsible for the safety of everyone in our spatial auction house. However, once you leave the auction house and return to Xian City, we will no longer be the ones in charge. After stabilizing his body, the old man glanced at the people who had left into the distance. After which, he turned his head to look at Xiao Yan by the side. At this moment, the two of them had already left the auction house and appeared in the open ground. Behind them was the enormous auction house that was like a huge beast crawling on the ground. Upon hearing this, Xiao Yan also turned his gaze to the old man in front of him and smiled kindly at the latter. From the old man's words, Xiao Yan could hear a trace of warning. Thank you for telling me, senior. I will be more careful. Xiao Yan's voice was calm, but his gaze was firm. Not only did he find the fire plume flower, he also obtained the remnant of the sage class cultivation method that was related to his ancestor Xiao Xian. No matter what, he would definitely leave this place. Definitely. Seeing the firm expression on Xiao Yan's face, the old man felt a little helpless in his heart. He could only nod and say, Then please go ahead. Xiao Yan nodded slightly. He lifted his foot and walked towards the spatial tunnel. Behind him, the old man's eyes slowly narrowed as he stared at Xiao Yan's back. When the latter was about to step into the spatial tunnel, the old man suddenly spoke. Mister, may I ask if you are Xiao Yan? Xiao Yan's body suddenly shook, and his lifted foot stopped in mid-air. In an instant, it was as if he had turned into a statue. After pausing for a few seconds, Xiao Yan sensed that the person behind him did not seem to have any ill intentions. Only then did he nod his head and hurriedly step into the spatial tunnel in front of him. The moment his body completely disappeared, a leisurely voice floated out. I am Xiao Yan. Soon after, Xiao Yan's figure disappeared from the spatial tunnel. The old man in the original spot immediately nodded when he heard these words. He gently exhaled a breath of air. The expression in his old eyes was unusually deep. Xian City. The brilliant sunlight spread throughout the city. The space auction had been going on for an entire week. Until this moment. Circular water-like spatial ripples suddenly spread apart in the flat and unadorned sky. Soon after, over a dozen black-robed human figures took a step forward. A technique similar to the one from a week ago was once again displayed at this moment. Not long after the spatial tunnel was successfully formed, human figures stepped out from within. In the city below, countless gazes were looking up at the changes in the sky. Their gazes contained various expressions. The auction has ended. Suddenly, someone in the city said. Chapter 740. Following the end of the auction, numerous human figures swarmed out of the spatial tunnel in the sky above Xian City. Soon, Human figures filled the sky above Xian City. They were just like a black mass of dark clouds, causing the city to be enveloped in an unusual atmosphere. When all these people appeared in the sky, the strange atmosphere that enveloped Xian City also disappeared. As the crowd surged out, the noise gradually spread. The entire Xian City became even more lively. Everyone in the city could not help but raise their heads to look at the sky. Everyone's eyes contained a tinge of surprise. The spatial auction was a grand auction that countless people in the western region hoped to participate in. Unfortunately, expectations were just expectations. Very few people actually had the opportunity to participate in each auction. When they saw the people who had participated in the auction walk out with satisfied and excited smiles on their faces, the people in the city could not help but feel a little jealous. Some people even began to have other thoughts at this moment. Robbing those who had participated in the auction in order to profit from it was not uncommon on the continent. This was basically a common problem, and it was also like an unwritten rule. Of course, whether this rule was valid or not was up to the strong to decide. The group of people who had just walked out of the spatial tunnel seemed to know what was going to happen next. Those who were strong were naturally not afraid at all. They held their heads high and left with their chests puffed out. It was as if they were prepared to deal with whatever came their way. As for those who were not strong enough and had gained something from the auction this time, they appeared cautious and vigilant. Their shifty eyes looked around in a slight panic. Soon after, their figures hurriedly flashed and flew out of Xian City. Usually, only these people would be followed by groups of 2 or 3 like hyenas. In a short period of time, the people who had just emerged from the spatial tunnel had either scattered or left. Once everyone had left, the people from the Hua clan, the Bai clan, and the Lin clan, as well as Su Songming and his granddaughter, were still waiting in the sky. The Hua clan and Bai clan had a clear goal. Naturally, they were here for Xiao Yan. Due to their relationship with the Hua clan and Bai clan, the Lin clan did not dare to act carelessly. Since they did not leave, the Lin clan's father and son naturally did not dare to act rashly. As for Su Songming, other than being suspicious of the situation in the arena, there was also the hatred in his heart towards Xiao Yan which caused him to remain at this place. Of course, an even greater reason was that Xiao Yan had offended the people from the Hua clan. He only wanted to stay and watch the show. Even if he could not personally vent his anger, his mood would more or less be a little happier if he could see the black-robed person being beaten by the people from the Hua clan. Oh, what's going on? Where are the people from my Hua clan? Why aren't they here yet? Judging by the time, they should be here by now. In the sky, Hua Ting's gaze slowly swept across the horizon before he frowned and looked down at Xian City below. After a simple investigation, he was shocked to discover that he could not detect any aura from the Hua clan. How can this be? We have been delayed for an hour. Logically speaking, even if they are not here yet, they should be close to our aura detection range. What is going on? Hearing this, Hua Yuning could not help but frown slightly. Based on the time, the people from the Hua clan should have arrived at Xian City less than an hour ago. From the time the auction ended until they came out, the people from the Hua clan should have arrived. Even if they were not here yet, they should be within their aura detection range. However, the current situation was that not only was there no sign of them, but they also could not detect any aura at all. It was as if they were not here at all. Could it be that the Hua clan did not receive the message from our jade strip? Hua Yuning frowned and guessed. That shouldn't be the case. As long as they are not too far away, the Hua clan should be able to receive the message. However, from the looks of it, either there is a problem with the jade strip, or the energy from the jade strip has been blocked by someone. Hua Ting shook his head and denied it. Hua Yuning's body suddenly shook when these words were uttered. The expression on her face also changed. Other than Xiao Yan, it was likely that only the Bai clan would dare to stop their actions within the spatial auction ground. Could it be them? As if he suddenly thought of something, Hua Ting's eyes narrowed and his gloomy expression changed abruptly. If it was them, then there should be no problem. With their strength, even if the two great clans joined forces, they might not be a match for them. Could it be those fellows from the space auction? What? It can't be. Haven't those fellows always been neutral? Why would they? Hua Yesing was taken aback, and she looked a little surprised. No, nothing is absolute. Do you think they will really be neutral just because they say so? In the face of absolute benefits, no one will maintain their so-called neutrality. Those words are just lies. Hua Ting shook his head and said solemnly. Benefits? Yes, Xiao Yan. His cultivation talent is too terrifying and his combat strength far surpasses experts of the same level. In addition, he is a rank 3 alchemist. With such strength, if the 4 great sects are not enemies with him, they will definitely not be willing to provoke him. However, the problem now is that once the people from the space auction intervene, this matter will be troublesome. As expected of a wise old man, Hua Ting had lived for so many years. After all, Hua Yuning, a greenhorn, could not compare with him. What should we do now? Are we just going to leave them alone? Leave them alone? How can we leave them alone? Although their auction house is quite powerful, don't forget that this is the Western region, the territory of our 4 great sections. Immediately use another jade strip. I don't believe that the person my Sky Rapier sect wants can be easily stopped by them. Hua Ting's expression was cold as he stared at the space tunnel in front of him. He did not say anything else and waited for Xiao Yan to appear. Hua Yuning, who was beside him, flipped her hand and another jade strip appeared in her palm. Without any hesitation, she crushed it. Almost at the same time, the same thing happened between the father and son of the Bai clan on the other side. Soon after, the 4 great sects in the square quietened down. Each of them had different thoughts as they waited for a certain person to appear. Under the waiting of the 4 great sects, Xiao Yan, who was dressed in a black robe, finally walked out of the space tunnel in front of everyone. Feeling the dazzling sunlight in front of him, Xiao Yan could not help but let out a long breath. The scene in front of him made Xiao Yan feel as if he had just been released from a cave. Although he would only be participating in the auction for 7 days, during these 7 days, the loud noise in the auction house made Xiao Yan feel quite uncomfortable. Perhaps it was because he had been alone for too long and could not get used to such a noisy atmosphere. His gaze slowly shifted downwards. Immediately, what entered his eyes was the people from the 3 clans who had surrounded him in front of the spatial passageway. As for Su Songming, he stood to the side and watched coldly. Chapter 741. Cuckoo, I have long since heard of Mr.'s great name. It is said that you are extremely bold. Even the 4 great sects have been toyed with by you. Today, the old me shall personally witness just how great the rumored Xiao Yan is. Hua Ting took a step forward. His eyes were cold as he stared at Xiao Yan. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a cold smile. His body shook and the powerful aura of an advanced 3-star Do Di immediately erupted from his body. It was just like an invisible small mountain that pressed down on Xiao Yan from all directions. Hua Yuning, who was standing beside the old man, also laughed coldly the instant this powerful aura surged out. Although he had heard of Xiao Yan's battle results in the desolate ancient remains, he had not personally witnessed it. He only thought that Zhuo Lin had exaggerated. After all, Xiao Yan's strength was merely that of a 6-star bandit. This was an indisputable fact. How could a mere bandit be a match for an elite Do Di? Moreover, the person he was facing was Hua Ting, who was an advanced 3-star Do Di. However, when Hua Ting's words were transmitted into the ears of the Lin father and son, as well as Su Songming and his grandson, the expressions of the members of the 2 clans changed at this moment. Their faces involuntarily revealed a shocked expression. At the same time, their eyes involuntarily revealed a terrified expression when they looked at Xiao Yan. He is actually that Xiao Yan. The Xiao Yan who killed a group of elite Do Di by himself in the desolate ancient remains. Lin Zheong involuntarily took a couple of steps back as he cried out in shock. The shock in his heart was incomparable. He had never imagined that Xiao Yan, who had shocked the entire Western region, would actually appear in front of him. Moreover, he had nearly truly fought with Xiao Yan. Should that happen, he did not dare to imagine just what kind of situation he would end up in. Humph, what do you mean by relying on his own strength? He merely borrowed the formation within the remains back then. At the end of the day, the deaths of those elite Do Di were caused by the formation within the remains. With his mere bandit strength, how could he possibly fight against an elite Do Di? That is merely a rumor. All of you actually believe it. Hua Yuning scolded coldly. Her words were filled with disdain. A clan like this wants to squeeze into the ranks of the 4 great clans? Do you think you're worthy? Hua Yesing glanced at Lin Zheong coldly before she retracted her gaze. On the other side, Bai Ying turned a blind eye to all of this, and he sneered in his heart. He'd personally witnessed Xiao Yan's strength in the desolate ancient ruins. Xiao Yan's true combat strength had far exceeded his current level of strength, so it was undoubtedly impossible for Bai Ying to suppress Xiao Yan with just this little bit of aura. Xiao Yan, suppress him for me. Hua Ting's expression was fierce as he cried out coldly in his heart. The aura that surged out was even stronger than before. Xiao Yan, who was still running, could not help but frown slightly in the face of the latter's aura. He was naturally not afraid of this aura, but the problem was that he was currently in Xian City, the territory of the two great clans. Since his identity had been exposed, it was likely that it would bring him endless trouble if he continued to be dragged here. I must leave this place as soon as possible. Xiao Yan violently clenched his teeth as he quietly exclaimed in his heart. After which, he lifted his gaze and met Hua Ting's gaze. There was a stern expression in his dark black eyes, and there was not the slightest trace of fear. Since his identity had been exposed in front of the other party, Xiao Yan naturally did not need to hide anymore. He might as well bring out his true ability and use his fastest speed to force back the other party's aura. His current goal was to leave this place first, and not to put on a brave front. King Kong Glass Body, Rise. Due to the drawback of the Force Elephant skill, Xiao Yan did not use the Force Elephant skill immediately. Instead, he used the King Kong Glass Body, which he was most familiar with, to face his opponent. Xiao Yan let out a low cry in his heart. Suddenly, a golden light shone from Xiao Yan's body, and he turned into a King Kong giant god in the blink of an eye. His huge body was like a small mountain standing in front of everyone. His body trembled slightly, and a buzzing sound could be heard between the heavens and the earth. Immediately after, the terrifying aura that came head-on pressed heavily on Xiao Yan's body like a tsunami. However, with the King Kong Glass Body, the aura and pressure were naturally reduced by a lot. Xiao Yan's body shook as he bore the terrifying pressure that came down on him. His powerful physical strength was displayed at this moment. In addition to Xiao Yan's fighting chi and enormous soul power, the three of them combined to block the aura and pressure. What? The appearance of this scene not only shocked the few people in the sky, but even the spectators in the city below also revealed shocked expressions on their faces. These people in the city had lived in this place for many years. Although they did not know everyone from the two great clans, they could guess that Hua Ting was a member of the Hua clan based on the arrogance of both parties. As for Xiao Yan, Hua Ting had just announced his identity in front of everyone in the city. Everyone in the city naturally knew about him. At this moment, the expressions of everyone in the city below suddenly stiffened when they saw that Hua Ting's aura and pressure had been blocked by Xiao Yan. They had long heard that Xiao Yan's strength was extraordinary. Now that they had seen it for themselves, he was really powerful. With the strength of a bandit, he was actually able to contend against an elite Dodi. How many people in the entire continent could do this? What a frightening strength. That is the pressure of an elite Dodi. He is actually able to forcefully block it with the strength of a 6-star bandit. Is this fellow really just a bandit? This person's strength is extraordinary and can be said to be terrifying. If he grows up in the future, it is likely that he will become a legendary existence like Tianju. Looks like the big battle that was spread in the desolate ancient remains earlier was not completely false. His strength has indeed reached the level where it is comparable to an elite Dodi. It is really difficult to imagine just how he trains. The appearance of this scene in the sky caused a wave of exclamations to be repeatedly emitted from the city below. However, in the blink of an eye, the entire Xian city had turned into an uproar. Countless number of gazes were like spotlights as they landed on the golden human figure in the sky. At this moment, this human figure was just like a giant god that stood proudly between the sky and the earth. Any strength placed in front of him was completely useless. Hua Ting's face was also completely stunned as he stood in the sky. He had also not expected that Xiao Yan in front of him would actually be able to block his aura and pressure. Before this scene appeared, he would never have believed that this was possible. However, at this moment, this was something that was impossible in the eyes of everyone. However, it was truly placed in front of him. How is this possible? Hua Ting widened his eyes. The shock in his heart caused him to speak incoherently. A long while later, he finally spat out a sentence with great difficulty. Xiao Yan, who had transformed into a giant god, completely ignored this. His small mountain-like body suddenly shook. A frightening strength immediately swept out like a volcanic eruption, forcefully pushing back the group of people around him. After which, Xiao Yan did not hesitate. He identified a direction and his body moved. He instantly used the absolute sky steps under his feet and chose to leave without any hesitation. Since things had developed to this point, There was naturally no need for him to continue hiding since his identity had already been exposed. However, this was the territory of the Hua clan and the Bai clan. Regardless of whether he was afraid of these people, it was difficult for two fists to fight against four hands. No matter what, he could only choose to leave this place first. With the speed of the absolute sky steps, in addition to the people around him who had been forcefully pushed back, Xiao Yan used this opportunity to flash and disappear in front of the people from the four factions. Chapter 742. By the time the few people in the sky recovered, Xiao Yan had already disappeared. Hua Ting's heart was furious. His old face had also turned green. Originally, he thought that he would be able to easily capture a mere bandit. However, Xiao Yan in front of him had far exceeded his imagination. This kind of strength was not something that a bandit could possess. Damn it! You want to leave? I want to see where you can run to with the old me around. Chase. No matter what happens today, we must leave Xiao Yan here. Hua Ting coldly cried out. His body moved and swiftly chased in the direction that Xiao Yan had disappeared. Behind him, the rest of the people also looked at each other before following closely behind. After using the King Kong glass body, the black robe that covered Xiao Yan's body had also scattered. His aura had already been exposed to the world. Additionally, Hua Ting was a 3-star Do D. It was naturally not difficult for him to chase after Xiao Yan's aura. Xiao Yan had already scattered the King Kong glass body in the distant sky. Unfortunately, his position had already been exposed. At this moment, it was a little difficult for him to hide his aura. Hence, Xiao Yan could only do his best to use the Sky Absolute Step and use it to dodge the pursuit of the people behind him. Behind Xiao Yan, the 3-star Do Di Hua Ting and Bai Ying were the fastest. Within a short moment, they were already able to vaguely see Xiao Yan's back. It must be said that the Sky Absolute Step might be frightening, but Xiao Yan's strength was lacking. It was still too difficult for him to easily dodge the pursuit of Hua Ting's group. As for Lin Zheong and Su Songming, they followed far behind Hua Ting and Su Songming. After all, their strength was inferior to Hua Ting's and Su Songming's speed was naturally inferior. As for Bai Zhan and the other three, they remained where they were and waited for the members of their respective clans to arrive. Xiao Yan's body was like a black bolt of lightning as it swiftly moved through the empty space. Biting cold wind swiftly blew past Xiao Yan's body, carrying a wave of ear-piercing sonic booms. Wherever he passed, the frightening wind pressure that was brought about by Xiao Yan formed a ditch in the mountain forest. Only when Xiao Yan's body flashed past did the ditch gradually recover. Following close behind, Hua Ting and Bai Ying also unleashed their speed. With their full strength, the speed of these two people was undoubtedly a little faster than Xiao Yan. The distance between them was gradually shortening. It was likely that Hua Ting and Bai Ying would catch up to Xiao Yan's speed soon. Damn it! They're really fast. Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily narrowed when he sensed the two presences rapidly approaching behind him. He fiercely clenched his teeth as his body jerked. His speed once again increased, and in the blink of an eye, he had already disappeared from the sky. Humph, Xiao Yan, where do you think you're going? Don't even think about escaping from my hands today. Hua Ting let out a cold snort when he sensed that Xiao Yan had suddenly increased his speed. The expression on his old face became ferocious. His body suddenly jerked as his feet stomped on the empty space a few times. Every time his foot landed, space would shatter. His body was like an arrow as he tore through the empty space at an extremely fast speed, swiftly chasing after Xiao Yan. Behind him, Bai Ying was not willing to be outdone. While the two of them were chasing after each other, they did not notice that a figure in black robes was stealthily following behind Hua Ting and Bai Ying. This situation continued for an entire 2 hours. During these 2 hours, Xiao Yan spared no effort as he hurried forward with all his might. Only at this moment did Xiao Yan discover that although he had left Xian City, he had entered the territory of the Bai clan. As long as Bai Ying was willing, he could mobilize his clan members in the shortest amount of time possible. Naturally, it would not be difficult for him to intercept Xiao Yan. However, before this scene could appear, the current Xiao Yan had already been blocked by Hua Ting and the other man who had hurried over from the front and the back in a pincer attack. Humph, Xiao Yan, if you surrender now, I guarantee that I will leave your corpse intact in the future. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. With a flip of Hua Ting's hand, a long sword landed in his palm. When he focused his eyes on it, he realized that this long sword was different from an ordinary sword. The difference was that an ordinary sword's blade was straight and sharp, but this sword was different. The blade was not straight at all. Instead, it was shaped like a saw. From this point of view, it was impossible for this sword to not tear off a piece of flesh once it landed on a person's body. On the other side, Bai Ying clenched his large hand. A dazzling thunderbolt rose from his arm. It lingered around his arm before transforming into a long lightning spear. The tip of the spear was pointed and a cold glint was pointed at Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's gaze looked to his left and right. His frown deepened without him realizing it. The current situation in the battleground was really one where there was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. Once they attacked together, it was likely that Xiao Yan would not be a match for them even if he had the help of the strength elephant skill. Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily became solemn when he thought of this. At the same time, he also felt somewhat helpless. His path forward had been cut off and he no longer had any path of retreat. He could only brace himself and rush forward when faced with 2 3-star Do Di. There was no way to retreat. The only way was to fight. Chi! His right hand was lowered and a glow flashed in his palm. An enormous heavy Xian ruler appeared inch by inch and was held in Xiao Yan's hand. The weight of the enormous ruler emitted a chi-chi sound of rushing air as Xiao Yan's hand fell. The biting cold wind pressure caused one to tremble without fighting. Humph humph, the old me thought that you only know how to run. Hua Ting parted his mouth and laughed mockingly. Even if Xiao Yan could withstand his aura and pressure, he was confident that he could suppress the latter if they were to really fight. Of course, this was indeed the case. Before his strength reached the Do Di class, Xiao Yan could at the very most fight with a 1-star Do Di by relying on the Force Elephant skill. He would barely be able to deal with a 2-star Do Di, let alone a 3-star Do Di. Hua Ting's laughter sounded as he lifted the sawtooth-like long sword in his hand. The body of the sword reflected a piercingly cold glow. As Do Chi was poured in, the entire long sword emitted a faint Do Chi glow. On the other side, Bai Ying also lifted the long spear in his hand at this moment. Do Chi was poured in and numerous thunderbolts were like small snakes that coiled around the long spear. Once Bai Ying gave the order, those thunderbolts would carry an aura that could destroy the world as they wildly bombarded Xiao Yan. Sensing this, Xiao Yan's hand, which was holding the heavy Xian ruler, involuntarily tightened. Threads of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. The Do Chi in his body did not dare to be careless as it surged out. The heavenly flame surged and agglomerated into a heavenly flame armor on the surface of Xiao Yan's body. Even though he knew that a heavenly flame armor would not be of much use in such a battle, Xiao Yan still agglomerated it. Chapter 743. The bright sunlight scattered over the land like golden sand. The sky had already gradually darkened. One could vaguely see a beautiful glow in the distant west. The golden sun, which no one dared to look directly at, was gradually descending toward the western mountains. Far away in the forest, 3 figures stood in the sky. However, judging from the current situation, things didn't seem to be looking good for them. Ha! It is rumored that you possess the strength to contend with an elite Do Di. In that case, allow the old me to see just how capable you Xiao Yan are. Hua Ting's head was covered by a glow as he stood in the empty air. The fiery red sunset shone on his body, causing him to appear like the sun that was about to set in the west. He appeared like an old man past his prime. Of course, this old man appeared to be nearing his twilight. However, the strength of this old man was so great that it was unimaginable. The current him was at his peak. The old man's body suddenly shot forward the instant his cry sounded. The long sword in his hand was pointed at Xiao Yan. A cold glint flickered on the edge of the sword. The old man's body was as fast as lightning. From the looks of it, it was as though he wanted to take Xiao Yan's life with one strike. Xiao Yan did not dare to slight the attack. He waved the enormous ruler in his hand and a chi-chi sound was emitted in the air in front of him. The heavenly flame soared with the wind and swiftly spread over the enormous ruler, wrapping it within. The enormous ruler was lifted and a ruler glow swept out. It soared with the wind and transformed into 100,000 feet large red glow. Its aura was majestic as it violently smashed toward Hua Ting, who was charging toward him. 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. Humph! Insignificant skill. Hua Ting coldly laughed with disdain. The long sword in his hand trembled. A couple of sword glows were drawn in front of him as he charged forward. Although the sword glows did not possess the majestic aura of the ruler glow, Their strength was much more concentrated. The moment the two collided, Xiao Yan's ruler glow was broken. A mere Ban Di actually dares to show off in front of an elite Do Di. You really overestimate yourself. Hua Ting coldly laughed with disdain. However, a surprise inadvertently flashed across the deep regions of his eyes when these words sounded. However, he swiftly withdrew it in the blink of an eye. Today, I will let you experience the gap between you and a Do Di. Xiao Yan's heart was greatly startled when the ruler glow was broken. The other party was indeed worthy of being a 3-star Do Di. The strength of this strength was not something that an ordinary elite Do Di could compare with. With his current strength, it was really impossible for him to fight against it. Moreover, there was Bai Ying behind him at this moment. The former's aura was aggressive while the latter was eyeing him like a tiger watching its prey. If Xiao Yan was the slightest bit careless, it was possible for him to fall into a situation where he would not be able to recover. Force Elephant Formula, activate. Xiao Yan shouted angrily in his heart. He didn't dare to hold back anymore. The only thing he could do now was to leave this place first. The situation was dangerous, so Xiao Yan couldn't care less. As the cry sounded in his heart, an enormous illusory figure also formed behind Xiao Yan's back. It held an illusory giant ruler that was similar to the heavy Xian ruler in its hand. The attack in its hand followed Xiao Yan's movements and attacked forward. Humph, you still dare to attack again. You really overestimate yourself. Break. Hua Ting immediately let out a cold snort of disdain when he saw Xiao Yan's attack coming again. He turned his body and appeared in the air above the illusionary figure. The long sword in his hand danced and heavily hacked at the illusionary figure behind Xiao Yan. Ha! The illusory figure behind Xiao Yan moved. The giant ruler in its hand rose and easily blocked the old man's attack. At the same time, an even more terrifying force flowed into the old man's body through the long sword, causing the old man's expression to quickly change. Damn it! What a strange strength. Could it be that this brat is a magical beast? The muscles on Hua Ting's old face twitched as he grimaced in pain. His entire arm, which was holding on to the long sword, was completely numb at this moment. A sharp pain was transmitted from the bones beneath his flesh, causing Hua Ting to be unable to endure it. In the blink of an eye, Hua Ting had already recovered. However, the gaze that he used to look at Xiao Yan did not dare to underestimate him. Xiao Yan was actually able to reach this stage. He naturally had his own ability. After the collision earlier, Hua Ting had already clearly discovered that Xiao Yan's strength was indeed not something that an ordinary Ban Di could possess. That kind of strength was enough to allow Xiao Yan to run amok among the Ban Di experts. It was likely that he even had the ability to fight against an ordinary Do Di. Thinking of this, Hua Ting's heart involuntarily felt a chill. The Do Qi in his body churned. He waved the long sword in his hand and once again charged toward Xiao Yan. Bai Ying, why are you still standing there in a daze? Since this brat is someone that the sect leader wants, we will naturally work together to capture him. We must not allow him to escape. The long sword danced as it engaged in a big battle with the illusory figure behind Xiao Yan. They continuously collided over a dozen times. Both parties were equally matched. At this moment, even Hua Ting felt somewhat helpless against Xiao Yan. At this moment, he could only turn his attack toward Bai Ying. As long as Bai Ying attacked, Xiao Yan would definitely not be able to endure against 2 3-star Do Di. Bai Ying involuntarily frowned when he heard this. It was unexpected that Xiao Yan's strength had risen to another level after not seeing him for half a year. At this moment, even a 3-star Do Di was unable to easily take him down. Of course, they did not know that the reason Xiao Yan was able to remain undefeated after dozens of exchanges with Hua Ting was because of the Strength Elephant skill. With the Strength Elephant skill on his body, Xiao Yan would not be able to feel any pain during this period of time. Hence, the speed and sharpness of his attacks would naturally not change. Hua Ting, on the other hand, was different. In the face of the strange illusory figure behind Xiao Yan, even he could not help but feel a headache. Thus, Xiao Yan would naturally be in an undefeatable position for a short period of time. Of course, the exact situation would likely have to wait until this battle was over. Finally, Bai Ying's body shook. He waved the long spear in his hand and joined the battle. Earlier, he had merely observed from outside the battle circle. The reason he did so was not only to give Hua Ting an opportunity to display his strength, but also to leave some leeway for Xiao Yan. Originally, Bai Ying thought that with Hua Ting's strength, he should be able to suppress Xiao Yan. It was likely that even if he did not intervene, Xiao Yan would not be defeated within a short period of time. However, the current situation caused Bai Ying to be a little stunned. Not only was Hua Ting unable to suppress Xiao Yan, but he was also being held back by the latter. Without the help of an outsider, forget about a short period of time, it was likely that the two of them would not be able to determine a victor even if they fought for another day and night. This caused Bai Ying's heart to be extremely shocked. Just think about it. With the strength of a 6-star half-D, he was able to restrain a 3-star elite Do-D and ensure that he did not fall into a disadvantage. This kind of ability was something that no one on the current continent could achieve. This fellow is really a freak. Even Bai Ying involuntarily cursed in his heart when he thought of this. He really did not know which faction had groomed such a monstrous talent. According to his current growth rate, it was likely that he would have a place in the entire Yuanwu continent in the future. Bai Ying raised his head when he thought of this. He turned the long spear in his hand and the tip of the spear was slightly twisted. He avoided the vital points of the illusory figure and used the body of the spear to suppress the enemy. This could be considered Bai Ying's final trump card. With the sudden addition of Bai Ying, the originally balanced battle immediately became one-sided. The strength of 2 3-star Do-D was indeed not to be trifled with. The strong joining hands to deal with Xiao Yan, who was only a 6-star half-D. If news of this spread, it was likely that they would be laughed at by others. However, in the current situation, it was likely that this was the only way to suppress Xiao Yan. After all, the latter's strength was really strange. All of their attacks were blocked by the illusory figure behind Xiao Yan. From the beginning until the end, Xiao Yan was not injured at all. This was also the thing that caused Bai Ying and Bai Ying the greatest headache. If this was not the case, it was likely that Xiao Yan would have long since become their captive. How would the two of them have to go through so much trouble to capture him? Damn it! Does this brat not have any weaknesses? With that illusory figure around, our attacks are unable to cause him the slightest harm. On the other hand, his aura has not weakened at all since the beginning. Hua Ting viciously cursed. He had also never seen such a strange chi method and Do technique. It was actually able to block all of their attacks. Other than those high-class Do techniques that Xiao Yan had barely dodged, every sword and spear attack was blocked by the illusory figure. This damn thing was like an invincible existence, causing the two of them to be extremely furious in their hearts. However, compared to the two of them at this moment, Xiao Yan's heart was even more solemn. Others might not know, but he clearly understood that all of the damage that the two of them dealt to the illusory figure would ultimately be reflected on him. At that time, Xiao Yan, who had received so much damage, would likely be seriously injured even if he did not die. He needed to quickly think of a way to escape during this period of time. Otherwise, once the Force Elephant skill disappeared, it would be the time of Xiao Yan's death. Bang! After another intense collision, Hua Ting and Hua Ting were forcefully pushed back by the illusory figure behind Xiao Yan. After which, they hurriedly turned their bodies and swiftly rushed towards the mountain forest behind them. Behind them, Hua Ting's face immediately revealed a fierce expression when he saw that Xiao Yan was about to leave. He cried out loudly and moved his body in an attempt to stop Xiao Yan. However, it was also at this moment that a black-robed human figure strangely appeared in the empty space not far in front of the two of them. Ha! The sudden appearance of this human figure caused Hua Ting and Hua Ting's faces to be startled. Their forward-charging bodies were also forced to stop. From the appearance of the latter, it was obvious that he had not come with good intentions. Moreover, from the looks of it, it was extremely likely that he had come for Xiao Yan. Who are you? Hua Ting's face was green. How could he be willing to just watch the duck that was about to reach his mouth fly away just like that? The person who will stop you. Under the black robe, a faint old voice was slowly spat out. It did not contain the slightest emotion. It was as though he did not feel the slightest pressure when facing 2 3-star Do-D at the same time. Hua Ting fiercely clenched his teeth. His gaze passed over the black-robed person in front of him and looked at Xiao Yan, who was swiftly rushing away. At this moment, the latter's speed was much slower than before. If Hua Ting wanted to catch up to him, it would be extremely easy. However, the appearance of the person in front of him had broken all of his plans. Chapter 744. The pitch-black night sky gradually enveloped the entire land. Tonight, the moon did not shine and the stars were dim. The entire world was enveloped in darkness. There was an invisible oppressive atmosphere that filled the entire world. In the vast mountain forest, the dense forest was dark. The mountain forest, which was usually gloomy, had become as dark as ink at this moment. Looking from afar, under the ink-black sky, there was an endless mountain forest that obstructed one's sight. In the distance, the towering mountain peaks were like huge beasts that stood between the sky and the earth under the cover of the night. Even though it was already late at night, this scene still caused one to feel an unusual sense of shock. At this moment, in the dark mountain forest, within the thicket, a pitch-black figure was swiftly moving like a ghost. Wherever he passed, the trees within a dozen feet of him were forcefully destroyed by an invisible force. However, the speed of this figure became slower and slower after a few twists and turns. The invisible energy that was originally around his body also suddenly disappeared. In the end, the body of the figure that was flashing suddenly became weak. He immediately fell from the sky uncontrollably like a rolling stone. After tumbling miserably on the ground a few times, he heavily smashed into the trunk of a tree. Following a muffled low sound, if one looked carefully, this figure was surprisingly a person. This person was Xiao Yan, who had hurriedly escaped from the hands of Huating and the other person not long ago. After flying for a short distance, Xiao Yan's force elephant tactic finally scattered uncontrollably. At the same time, all the injuries that the force elephant tactic had received in the previous big battle were also fed back to Xiao Yan at this moment. After suffering repeated heavy injuries, Xiao Yan was currently in unbearable pain even though he was not seriously injured to the point of near death. His body was unable to move and even the dou qi in his body had been exhausted in the previous big battle. In the dark night, Xiao Yan's face appeared particularly pale. His entire body was covered in various wounds and bruises. Some of the wounds seemed to have been forcefully torn by some kind of sharp weapon. As for the majority of the bruises, they were basically caused by Bai Ying. Even so, Xiao Yan understood that Bai Ying had held back in the battle. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured at this moment, let alone be conscious. The intense pain that came from all over his body caused Xiao Yan to have no choice but to curl up. The consciousness in his mind gradually dimmed. There was an invisible chill that wrapped around Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan clearly understood that this was a sign that he was about to faint. Once he fainted at this moment, it was very likely that he would be found by those two fellows. No matter what, he could not fall asleep now. No. I can't sleep. I must not sleep. At this moment, there seemed to be something deep within Xiao Yan's heart that was calling out to him. A short moment later, Xiao Yan, whose mind had become increasingly giddy, suddenly widened his eyes. Unlike his pale face, the current Xiao Yan's eyes were scarlet red. There was a cluster of purple flames burning fiercely deep within his eyes. 3,000 burning flame. The 3,000 burning flame was known as the Undying flame. As long as the flame was not extinguished, there would be room for recovery regardless of how serious the injuries were. At this moment, Xiao Yan was borrowing the mysteriousness of the 3,000 burning flame to do his best to recover from the injuries within his body. Of course, just the 3,000 burning flame was far from enough. Although the heavenly flame was strong, it was after all not his actual body. The help it could provide to Xiao Yan was limited. If he wanted to swiftly recover from the injuries within his body, he still had to rely on the strength of the medicinal pill. Xiao Yan lifted his hand that was covered in fresh blood in front of him. He forcefully endured the intense pain within his body. With a flip of his hand, a round medicinal pill appeared in his palm. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan immediately swallowed the medicinal pill. Immediately, the powerful medicinal strength swiftly spread within Xiao Yan's body. Although the medicinal strength was dense, it did not have much of an effect on Xiao Yan's body. However, when the medicinal strength passed through Xiao Yan's internal organs, it caused him to feel an intense pain. Soon after, however, it brought about the recovery of his injuries. Xiao Yan's heart slowly sighed in relief as he sensed the injuries within his body gradually recovering. However, his heart still did not dare to relax. The remaining spiritual strength carefully surged out as he remained cautious of the situation around him. At the same time, on the other side, Huating and Bai Ying were facing the strange black-robed person who had suddenly appeared in front of them. The expressions of the two of them were solemn. "Who exactly are you?" Huating's expression was gloomy as he spoke. It was not difficult to hear a fury in his voice. Although everyone was also an elite dou di, The strength of this mysterious black-robed person in front of them was clearly above the two of them. This was because he and Bai Ying were actually unable to gain any advantage from this black-robed person in the earlier collision between the two of them. Originally, they wanted to send one of them to chase after Xiao Yan. However, from the looks of things it was impossible. The other party's intention was to help Xiao Yan block the two of them from the very beginning. Who I am is not important. What is important is that all of you can forget about leaving this place with me around. A faint voice was softly emitted from under the black robe. However, it caused Hua Ting's expression to become increasingly gloomy. We are members of the Heavenly Sword Gate. If you dare to stop us, you will be going against the Heavenly Sword Gate. Ha! This time around, the old man laughed softly and considered it a reply. Hua Ting's heart immediately became furious when he heard this laughter filled with disdain. Soon after, he appeared to have suddenly recalled something. Both of his eyes suddenly narrowed. His gaze stared intently at the black-robed person in front of him. His gaze swept over the latter's collar, which had been purposely covered. He immediately raised his head and said, "You are someone from the spatial auction house." Under the black robe, a surprised expression flashed across the old face. Immediately, it turned into a soft smile and was non-committal. "In that case, the one who stopped us from transmitting information through the jade token in the auction house is also you." Hua Ting's expression was gloomy as he continued to speak when he saw that the person who had fled did not deny it. Hearing these words, a look of surprise also appeared on Bai Ying's face. As for what he was thinking in his heart, it was unknown. Helping Xiao Yan escape. Are you going to publicly become enemies with our four great sects? You should know that Xiao Yan is a person that the four great sects jointly want to capture. Are the four great sects very strong? What did you say? The old man spoke indifferently. His words contained a trace of contempt. When these words reached Hua Ting's ears, the latter was instantly enraged. He had never seen anyone who dared to evaluate the four great sects in such a manner. The so-called four great sects only have some achievements in the Shilin region. Aren't you thinking too highly of yourselves? Others may be afraid of your four great sects, but we are not. The black-robed old man laughed coldly. He completely ignored the ashen expressions of the two people in front of him. However, at this moment, a large group of people flew over from afar behind Hua Ting and Hua Ting. In the blink of an eye, they had already arrived in front of Hua Ting and Hua Ting. The people were divided into two groups. One group was dressed in white robes with the word "Bai" written on the badge on their chests. The other group was dressed in black robes with the word "Hua" carved on their chests. These two groups of people were the experts of the Bai and Hua clans. At this moment, there was a young man leading the group in front of them. The two were the young masters of their respective clans, Bai Zhan and Hua Yuning. "Father." Bai Zhan respectfully greeted Bai Ying as he approached. Bai Ying nodded slightly. His eyes met with Bai Zhan's as their minds merged. Ha 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 ha. Hua Ting's expression immediately became pleasantly surprised when he saw this group of people who had arrived in time. This sudden reinforcement made him extremely happy. As long as they were here, even if he and Bai Ying were held back by the black-robed man, these people could still enter the mountain to search for Xiao Yan's traces. Haha, the heavens are really on my side. Old man, the two of us will accompany you here today. As for the rest of you, immediately enter the mountain and search inch by inch. You must find Xiao Yan's traces. Hua Ting first laughed coldly at the black-robed man. Then, his gaze turned back to the group behind him as he laughed loudly and ordered. The people of the Hua clan immediately nodded when they heard the order. The people of the Bai clan looked at Bai Ying and his father, as if waiting for their orders. Third Elder Hua, Xiao Yan's strength is extraordinary. He has the sky extinction step. In addition, the two of us were held back by him just now. I'm afraid he has already left this mountain range, right? Bai Ying secretly frowned as he probed Hua Ting. No. I personally saw that fellow's speed become increasingly slower as he left. I am certain that Xiao Yan must have been seriously injured in the previous battle. That illusionary figure of his could not have completely blocked our attacks. Currently, Xiao Yan is likely hiding in the mountain forest to secretly recover from his injuries. Hua Ting violently shook his head. He recalled the battle with Xiao Yan earlier. While he pondered in his heart, his words hit the nail on the head. He had actually guessed Xiao Yan's current situation. Bai Ying's heart immediately jumped when he heard this. Indeed, He had also seen the scene when Xiao Yan left. At that time, Xiao Yan's speed was much slower than before. Moreover, he also had some doubts about the illusionary figure behind Xiao Yan. It was impossible for there to be a Do technique that was so powerful. It was not that there were no defensive Do techniques that could block attacks, but it was impossible for them to reach such a level. From the way Xiao Yan hurriedly left, he should be aware of his own situation. It was likely that a large part of the reason he had escaped from the two of them was to prevent the illusionary figure's effect from passing and causing him to fall into their hands. Chapter 745. It had to be said that Hua Ting and Bai Ying's guesses were extremely accurate. They had pretty much guessed Xiao Yan's current situation. The simultaneous movement of the two clans added quite a lot of pressure on Xiao Yan. In the night sky, Bai Ying and Hua Ting continued to confront the black-robed man. As for the others, they circled around the black-robed man and scattered towards the mountain forest in the distance. The black-robed man did not stop them. However, his old face under the black robe frowned slightly. He was slightly worried in his heart. Opposite him, Hua Ting sneered. While he stared at the black-robed man, he was also paying attention to the movements in the mountain forest behind him. Once Xiao Yan appeared, no matter how strong the black-robed man was, he would not be able to protect Xiao Yan. The pitch-black forest was completely silent. Ever since the group of people in the sky appeared, the magical beasts in the mountain forest below had also obediently quieted down. This time, the Hua clan and the Bai clan had moved together. There were a total of 200 to 300 people from the two clans. All of them were half-martial emperors. The strongest among them had even reached the level of a 9-star half-martial emperor. Moreover, there were a total of 4 of them. Other than these people from the two clans, the leaders were Hua Yuning, Bai Zhan, the head of the Lin clan, Lin Zheong, and Su Songming. Originally, Su Songming did not want to interfere in the matters of the two clans. However, this matter was related to Xiao Yan. He wished that he could immediately capture Xiao Yan. According to Hua Ting's words earlier, Xiao Yan was definitely heavily injured. If he could find him, Su Songming would definitely torture him properly to vent his and his granddaughter's anger. Hundreds of half-martial emperors moved together. Their momentum was vast and mighty. The invisible pressure that was created caused the entire area to be enveloped in a somber feeling. After a small search, the crowd was unable to find anything. Helpless, they could only scatter in all directions. While these people scattered, Xiao Yan sat up with great difficulty in the pitch-black forest. The injuries on the surface of his body had already been completely healed by the 3,000 burning flame. However, it was likely that it would be difficult to recover from the internal injuries within his body without a period of time. Xiao Yan inhaled a deep breath of air. With a thought, he maneuvered the little Do Qi in his body and began to refine the medicinal pill that he had just swallowed. The hundreds of half-martial emperors spread out in the sky above the dense forest. They were just like an enormous net that covered a large area of the dense forest. The location where Xiao Yan was located was coincidentally within their search area. Fortunately, Xiao Yan's current location was at the border of their search area. If he was lucky, they might not be able to search this place. Of course, if he was unlucky, it would be hard to say. However, the helpless thing was that the injuries within Xiao Yan's body were quite serious. The current situation did not allow him to be careless. If he did not recover from the injuries within his body in time, it was likely that even if he was able to forcefully avoid this search, it was likely that there would be repercussions that would be difficult to heal after he recovered from his injuries. This would undoubtedly be an extremely serious blow to his training path. Naturally, Xiao Yan would do his best to put an end to this. Time slowly flowed by. The 3 people in the sky were still facing each other. The black-robed person did not attack. Hua Tingbai could only frown and wait. With the black-robed person in front of them, it was impossible for them to bypass him no matter what. With the latter's strength, it was likely that they would have already fallen if he did not intend to attack them. The strength of this black-robed person was far above the 2 of them. It was likely that he had already reached the level of a 6-star Do D. In the sky above the dense forest, the search area gradually expanded. Xiao Yan, who was refining the medicinal pill in his body, could already hear the human voices in the sky not far away. Immediately, Xiao Yan's heart sank slightly. He did not expect that these fellows would actually come to this place so quickly. It appeared that he could no longer continue to stay in this place that he was currently at. A short moment later, when Xiao Yan heard that the human voices were getting closer, he could only forcefully stop the refining process of the medicinal pill within his body. He opened his eyes. His pale face seemed to be vaguely visible in the dark night sky. After identifying the direction, Xiao Yan's body moved and swiftly rushed toward the deeper parts of the dense forest. The group of people searching in the sky above the dense forest had finally reached this place. However, Xiao Yan's figure had already left long ago. In the blink of an eye, one night had already passed. Other than discovering some traces that were related to Xiao Yan, the group of people who were searching did not discover the latter's figure from the beginning until the end. The chase continued for an entire night. After repeatedly dodging for an entire night, the injuries on Xiao Yan's body did not seem to have improved. Instead, those fellows who were like shadows behind him were getting closer and closer to Xiao Yan. As for Hua Tingbai and Bai Ying, they had already disappeared from their sight into the distance. In the dense forest of towering trees, the dense branches and leaves covered the blazing sun. Occasionally, some spots of light would shoot down from the gaps between the branches and leaves, shining on the ground like stars, forming a natural pattern of spots of light. It was a beautiful sight. The forest was completely silent. Occasionally, a low roar from an unknown magical beast could be heard. It passed through the dense forest and lingered in the forest. Although this was still the Bai family's territory, Xiao Yan discovered that the magical beasts here were getting stronger and stronger the deeper he went into the forest. At this moment, Xiao Yan used his spiritual energy to investigate and discovered that there were no less than 10 half-martial emperor-level magical beasts. There was even a 9-star half-martial emperor. Moreover, it was right in front of Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's complexion was pale as he stood on the trunk of a huge tree. His gaze was looking into the distance. At the end of his line of sight was a mountain peak. The owner of the 9-star half-martial emperor aura was there. Turning his gaze, Xiao Yan turned his head and looked into the distance behind him. He could faintly see a few black dots. Immediately, Xiao Yan's heart moved and a trace of light flashed through his eyes. Soon after, he leaped and flew towards the mountain peak in front of him. After a short moment, Xiao Yan's figure appeared at the foot of the mountain. Before Xiao Yan was an enormous cave entrance. The 9-star half-martial emperor aura was within this cave. As for this place, it was its cave dwelling. Xiao Yan's feet moved and he strode into the cave. Roar! Where did this human come from? This is this king's territory. Quickly retreat and this king will spare your life. Otherwise, if you dare to take another step forward, I will immediately take your life. Chapter 746. The tall mountain peak stood like a pillar that supported the sky. Xiao Yan's gaze was calm as he stood at the entrance of the cave at the foot of the mountain. Xiao Yan was indifferent to the waves of thunder-like beast roars that were transmitted from deep within the cave. He turned his head and looked behind him. Immediately, he moved his feet and continued walking toward the deep parts of the cave. As one of the 4 great clans, the Bai clan's territory was not small. Currently, the people from the Bai clan and the Hua clan had formed a circle around the area where Xiao Yan was, and were carefully searching for his whereabouts. Under this kind of situation, repeatedly moving and hiding would only delay the healing of the injuries within Xiao Yan's body. In the long run, not only would his injuries not recover, they would also become increasingly serious. Being in such a dangerous situation, Xiao Yan could no longer delay any longer. With his current condition, unless he completely recovered from the injuries within his body, he would sooner or later be dragged to his death by these fellows. Roar! Human, are you courting death? Based on Xiao Yan's current state, the 9-star half-martial emperor in the cave immediately saw through his strength. A 6-star half-martial emperor was currently injured. Entering his cave was undoubtedly courting death. The words from before were already his final warning. However, Xiao Yan still had an indifferent appearance. This was a direct violation of the territory of this 9-star half-martial emperor. Roar! Following a deafening roar, a violent gale suddenly swept out from the depths of the cave. Immediately after, the space in front of Xiao Yan suddenly distorted, and a figure of light suddenly flashed and appeared before Xiao Yan. After the figure of light condensed, a middle-aged man with a vigorous aura appeared. Judging from his aura, he had already reached the level of a 9-star half-martial emperor. In the nearby mountain range, he could be said to be a king-like existence. Human, this king does not wish to become enemies with you. However, since you insist on courting death, you can't blame me. Scram. This middle-aged man had the strength of a 9-star half-martial emperor. In his opinion, the black-cloaked man before him was merely a 6-star half-martial emperor. Furthermore, the black-cloaked man was seriously injured. A single punch from him was enough to take his life. The middle-aged man clenched his right fist and threw a punch at Xiao Yan without hesitation. In the face of such a situation, Xiao Yan's pale face was calm, and his thoughts were extremely clear. A pair of pitch-black eyes stared at the rapidly growing fist. When the fist was in front of him, Xiao Yan flicked his finger, and a black light suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Almost at the instant when the fist was about to land on Xiao Yan's face, the black shadow reached out and firmly locked the middle-aged man's hand. In an instant, the sharp wind from the fist blew past Xiao Yan's cheeks, blowing up his hair. Looking at the middle-aged man in front of him, at this moment, his eyes were wide open as he stared fixedly at the terrifying fellow who had suddenly appeared in front of him. His face was filled with a sluggish expression. "This, you." Bang! The black shadow instantly released the hand that was grabbing the middle-aged man's wrist. At the same time, a fist smashed into the middle-aged man's face. With just one punch, this 9-star half-martial emperor, the king of the nearby mountain range, was sent flying. He heavily smashed into the stone wall, and his entire body was deeply embedded in it. Xiao Yan turned his head and looked at this black figure. It was the Northern King in Xiao Yan's storage ring. Currently, the Northern King's strength had already reached the level of a 1-star Do D. If he went all out, even a 2-star Do D would not be able to defeat him. It was naturally easy for him to deal with a mere half-martial emperor. Bang! The middle-aged man's body miserably fell out of the stone wall and heavily smashed into the ground. He instantly woke up and hurriedly raised his head. His gaze instantly locked onto the Northern King, and his eyes revealed a frightened expression. "Sir, I did not mean to offend you. Please forgive me." The middle-aged man hurriedly arrived in front of the Northern King and respectfully bowed. His entire body trembled as he kowtowed. Each time he kowtowed, a muffled sound would be heard. However, the middle-aged man did not hold back. It was as if he was afraid that this expert in front of him would be dissatisfied with him. Although he had only received one punch from the Northern King, the middle-aged man immediately understood that he was no match for the black shadow in front of him. To be able to send a 9-star half-martial emperor flying with one punch, who else could possess such strength other than an elite Do D? However, due to the fear in his heart, the middle-aged man did not dare to raise his head to look at the Northern King in front of him. He did not even dare to probe the latter's aura. This was why he was unable to identify the puppet body of the Northern King in time. "Get up. I don't want your life." Xiao Yan took a step forward and casually spoke. The middle-aged man was slightly startled. He raised his head only to see the pale-faced Xiao Yan standing in front of him. Soon after, his gaze swept over the Northern King behind Xiao Yan. Only then did he realize that the latter's eyes were empty and lifeless. It was as if it did not have a soul. Puppet. The middle-aged man's heart was suddenly startled. He did not expect that the elite Do D in front of him was actually a puppet. Since this was the case, was this black-robed young man not the owner of this puppet? Ah! The middle-aged man's heart trembled when he thought of this. He hurriedly bowed to Xiao Yan once again. His body trembled, but he did not dare to get up again. "All right, get up. I have already said that I will not kill you. I have only looked for you to ask for your help." Xiao Yan felt helpless when he saw that the middle-aged man would kneel at the slightest provocation. Could it be that these magical beasts were also casual? "Sir, you must be joking. Since Sir wants this little one's help, this little one will naturally not refuse. I still have to thank Sir for giving me this opportunity to perform." The middle-aged man hurriedly replied respectfully when he heard Xiao Yan's words. His words were filled with respect for Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan did not comment on this. He directly said, "I need to borrow your cave. I need to borrow your cave for a while. After that, someone will come looking for me. As long as you can drive them away, this is yours." Xiao Yan's words had just sounded when the Northern King behind him took half a step forward. Immediately, an extremely dangerous aura swiftly enveloped the middle-aged man's heart, causing him to feel extremely terrified. Soon after, a transparent jade bottle appeared in Xiao Yan's hand after Xiao Yan's words sounded. The moment the jade bottle appeared, a rich medicinal fragrance spread out from within. A Tier 3 medicinal pill. The middle-aged man was overjoyed. He could not help but exclaim in surprise. He raised his hands and was about to take it from Xiao Yan's hands. "Humph, if you want it, you'd better do what I want you to do first." Xiao Yan coldly snorted, instantly startling the middle-aged man. He immediately flipped his hand and put away the medicinal pill in his hand. Seeing this, the middle-aged man hurriedly bowed to the side and raised his hands. He made an inviting gesture to Xiao Yan and respectfully said, "Sir, this way please." Glancing at the middle-aged man, Xiao Yan expressionlessly nodded. He moved his feet and walked towards the depths of the cave. After a short while, Xiao Yan had already arrived at the deepest part of the cave. It was different from the narrow and dark space from before. Not only was it spacious, but it was also brightly lit. The middle-aged man had decorated it quite well. However, Xiao Yan did not have the time to care about this. He directly walked to the deepest part of the cave and sat down. His gaze turned and once again landed on the middle-aged man in front of him. "I'm only borrowing your cave. I don't want to do anything to you. Therefore, I hope that you don't have any other intentions. Otherwise, if even one of them comes in, don't blame me for being ruthless." As he spoke, the Northern King took a step forward. The terrifying aura caused the middle-aged man's body to tremble uncontrollably. "Ha! Sir, you must be joking. It's my honor to have you in my humble abode. Sir, you can stay for as long as you want. Why would I object?" The middle-aged man was shocked and hurriedly replied with a silly smile. His gaze occasionally glanced at the Northern King. This was the real reason why he was so afraid. Hearing this, Xiao Yan did not comment. He casually sent the middle-aged man to guard the door. Soon after, under the protection of the Northern King, he began to concentrate on refining the medicinal pill in his body. Chapter 747. First, there was the intimidation of the Northern King. Then, there was the temptation of the medicinal pellet. With the two added together, the middle-aged man was indeed well behaved. In the depths of the cave, only after Xiao Yan confirmed that the middle-aged man did not do anything else, did he relax and wholeheartedly immerse himself in refining the medicinal pellet within his body. At this moment, the search of several hundred half-martial emperors was also in full swing. This time around, the invisible battle between Xiao Yan and this group of people would be a tug of war. The final outcome would be determined by whether or not this group of people could find Xiao Yan before he recovered from his injuries. Time was like the sand between one's fingers. Unknowingly, a lot of time had already passed. Within the cave, Xiao Yan was immersed in refining the medicinal pellet within his body. As for the people outside, they had finally expanded their search range to this place. The mountain wind whistled. It was like the low roar of wild beasts as it blew through the mountain forest. At the foot of the mountain was an enormous cave. A valiant aura was faintly emitted from within, causing one to feel solemn. At this moment, 3 middle-aged men in black robes slowly descended from the sky. Their gazes landed on the interior of the cave. Among the 3 of them, one was an 8-star half-martial emperor and the other 2 were 7-star half-martial emperors. With such a lineup, they would be able to move unhindered in this mountain range. "Huayun, do you think that Xiao Yan might be here?" A frail-looking 7-star half-martial emperor among the 3 asked with a frown on his face. Carefully, he asked a middle-aged man with the strength of an 8-star half-martial emperor. When he said those words, he intentionally or unintentionally glanced at the pitch-black cave. The person inside the cave caused him to be extremely nervous. "I don't know. Let's look around first. Didn't we detect a trace of Xiao Yan's aura earlier? This means that he is definitely in the vicinity. We have already searched the surroundings, except for this place. As for whether he is here or not, we will know once we give it a try." The middle-aged man called Huayun shook his head. His tone was rather firm. But the guy inside seems to be a 9-star half-martial emperor. His strength. What's there to be nervous about? Even if he's a 9-star half-martial emperor, could it be that he would dare to touch a member of our Hua clan? Moreover, with the 3 of us working together, how could we possibly fear him? Before the thin middle-aged man could finish his words, he was immediately reprimanded by Huayun. The latter's head shrank and he did not dare to say anything else. He scratched his head, while his gaze was still somewhat nervous as he looked at the cave entrance. After that, the 3 of them, led by Huayun, headed towards the cave. The three of them arrived at the entrance of the cave one after another. As they got closer, an extremely thick smell of blood gushed out from the cave and assaulted the three of them. Smelling the nauseating stench of blood, the expressions of the three changed. Such a strong stench of blood. Just how ferocious was this magical beast? Although this was the case, it did not stop the footsteps of the three of them. Before they left, Ting had already issued a reward. As long as any one of them was able to find Xiao Yan, they would obtain 5 Tier 3 medicinal pills. How could they be willing to accept such a temptation? However, just as the three of them stepped into the cave entrance, a beastly roar that caused one's heart to tremble was suddenly emitted from the deep interior of the cave. Roar! Where did these humans come from? How dare you trespass into this king's territory? A furious cry was emitted. In the blink of an eye, an extremely powerful and frightening aura wildly attacked from deep within the cave, forcefully forcing the three of them back. The three of them were startled. Their footsteps hurriedly pulled back. While their expressions changed, the Do Chi within their bodies swiftly surged out at this moment to block this aura. We are from the Hua clan, one of the 4 great clans. We are here to do our job impartially and only to search for one person. We do not wish to start a conflict with you. If we have offended you, please forgive us. Hua Yun's expression changed drastically. He was surprised in his heart. The three of them had only just stepped into this fellow's territory. How could he be so powerful and overbearing? However, after thinking about it, this fellow was just like a fiend. That heavy stench of blood from earlier made it no wonder that his temper was so irritable. After staying in this kind of environment for too long, it was likely that even they would not be able to endure it. However, they did not know that the reason this fellow in the cave was so irritable was because Xiao Yan had occupied his nest. Even though Xiao Yan had said that he would use Tier 3 medicinal pills as a reward, he was still suppressing the resentment in his heart. The appearance of these 3 people at this moment had allowed him to find a target to vent his anger. Oh, people from the 4 great clans. A soft cry of surprise was emitted from deep within the cave. The middle-aged man frowned. He did not expect that the people Xiao Yan had asked him to block would actually be people from the 4 great clans. This was going to be a little troublesome. The hearts of the 3 people outside the cave immediately rejoiced when they heard the voice that was emitted from the interior of the cave. They thought in their hearts that this fellow was indeed afraid of the boldness of their 4 great clans. Immediately, the 3 of them exchanged glances and smiled. They lifted their feet and prepared to enter the cave once again. Stop right there. It was also at this moment that the middle-aged man within the cave cried out a command. The hearts of the 3 people leaped and their footsteps once again came to a halt. Even if you are people from the Hua clan, you should be clear that this is the territory of the Bai clan. This mountain range is under the jurisdiction of the old me. What right do you people from the Hua clan have to enter the territory of the Bai clan to search for someone? Enough. I don't want to hear any more from you. On account that you are also from the 4 great clans, if you turn around and leave now, I can pretend that nothing has happened. Otherwise, even if you are from the Hua clan, don't blame me for being impolite. Without waiting for Hua Yun to open his mouth, the middle-aged man within the mountain cave spoke a sentence that forcefully stuffed the latter's words back into his mouth. At the same time, a powerful aura once again attacked, causing the trio's expressions to abruptly change drastically. They had already sensed a dense killing intent from this aura and pressure. They did not doubt that if the 3 of them continued to stay here, they would definitely end up calling out this lunatic. At that time, they would really have no way to survive. In the face of this situation, the expression on Hua Yun's face fluctuated indeterminately. Who would have expected that this madman would actually completely ignore their status as members of the Hua clan? Although the 3 of them were high-level half-emperors, in the face of absolute strength, no matter how many of them they had, it was useless. Although the words that he had spoken previously were very courageous, in reality, even Hua Yun was incomparably nervous in his heart. It was only because the 2 people beside him were present that he deliberately pretended to be fearless. Old brother Hua Yun, what should we do now? To the side, the skinny middle-aged man's face had already turned deathly pale from fright. Helpless, he could only seek help from Hua Yun. When he heard these words, Hua Yun really wished that he could immediately turn around and give him a slap. However, the current situation was dangerous and they had no choice but to work together. Hua Yun hurriedly thought about it in his heart. In the end, the method that Hua Yun thought of was to retreat backwards. Helpless, with that fellow in the cave present, They were destined to be unable to enter this place. However, when Hua Yun thought about it again, he could not help but laugh at himself in his heart. If even they were unable to enter this cave, how could the injured Xiao Yan possibly enter? If that was the case, he would have long been killed by that fellow in the cave. After which, the three of them respectfully cupped their hands together towards the pitch-black cave and hurriedly left, leaving behind three miserable figures. It was only at this moment that the middle-aged man in the cave secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the three of them were not as strong as him. Otherwise, if he was unable to subdue them today, once Xiao Yan was awakened, not only would they be finished, even his little life would not be able to be saved. The middle-aged man arrived in front of the cave and gazed at the sky above the mountain forest in the distance. Figures that were like grains of black rice were constantly flashing, as if they were searching for something. However, when they passed by his vicinity, they were extremely sensible and left. When he saw this scene, the middle-aged man secretly rejoiced in his heart. At the same time, a feeling of suspicion involuntarily rose in his heart. At this moment, who exactly was the identity of the black-robed man in his cave, to actually cause one of the four great clans, the Hua clan, to mobilize so many people? Chapter 748. In the blink of an eye, a full week had passed since Xiao Yan had disappeared from the Bai family's sphere of influence. During this week, the Bai family and the Hua family had searched the entire mountain range, from the periphery of the mountain range to the core. The orders from the higher-ups were to find Hua Ting if he was alive, and Xiao Yan was definitely still in the mountain range. Unfortunately, a week had passed, and the people looking for Xiao Yan had searched back and forth no less than 5 times, but they still could not find any trace of Xiao Yan. In the void, the black-clothed man had already left, and Hua Ting had no choice but to return to the Hua family under pressure. Many people in the Hua family even thought that he had persisted because he wanted to cover up his mistake at the auction. For a time, Hua Ting, who did not gain any favor outside and was constantly under pressure within the Hua family, fell into a state of depression because of this matter. In his heart, he was even more determined to find Xiao Yan. At the same time, in the mountain range, Xiao Yan, who was in the cave, had more or less recovered from his injuries after a week of recovery. In the outside world, the experts sent by the Hua family were also called back to the Hua family. Due to Hua Ting's matter, they would no longer be under his command for the time being. As for the Bai family, they had moved completely to cooperate with the Hua family's actions. From the beginning to the end, Bai Ying had not given any orders to find Xiao Yan. All the actions of the Bai family experts were controlled by Hua Ting. Now that the experts of the Hua family had been called back, the people of the Bai family naturally returned to the Hua family. In the cave, Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes. Not long ago, he had spread out his soul strength and clearly sensed that the two families had all retreated. Although the situation seemed to be safe for the time being, Xiao Yan did not intend to leave just like that. There were always exceptions to everything. If the two families left just to bait Xiao Yan, then wouldn't he be falling into their trap if he left now? Moreover, Xiao Yan flipped his hand and took out an exquisitely crafted jade box from his storage ring. Inside this jade box was the first auction item that Xiao Yan had won in the last auction, the jade bone fruit. The jade bone fruit was able to increase the cultivation level of the person who devoured it. However, this level of increase was limited to a Band D expert. For example, the current Xiao Yan's strength had already reached the intermediate level of a 6-star Band D. If he were to swallow this jade bone fruit, his strength would once again increase to an advanced level of a 6-star Band D. Although they were both 6-star half-emperors, the gap between the middle stage and the late stage was like the gap between heaven and earth. With Xiao Yan's current strength, after using all of his techniques, he would at the very most be comparable to an ordinary middle stage 1-star Do D. In the long run, Xiao Yan would definitely be at a disadvantage. However, once Xiao Yan swallowed this jade bone fruit, his strength would increase to the late stage of a 6-star half-emperor. At that time, Xiao Yan would have the confidence to face a late stage 1-star Do D. Even if he were to face a middle stage 1-star Do D, Xiao Yan would still have the strength to fight. Of course, all of this was merely Xiao Yan's personal guess. As for the true strength, it would depend on the strength that Xiao Yan was able to erupt with in an actual battle. After taking out the jade bone fruit, Xiao Yan did not hurry to swallow it. Instead, a thought passed through his mind and he used his powerful soul strength to call back the middle-aged man, who was still obediently guarding the entrance of the cave. "Cuckoo, sir. Do you have a mission to hand over to Bao since you have summoned me?" After entering the cave, The middle-aged man who called himself a Bao immediately bowed to Xiao Yan. His face was filled with smiles. His heart did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. This time around, his eyes did not pay attention to the northern king beside Xiao Yan. Instead, they were focused on Xiao Yan. The soul strength of this black-robed young man in front of him had already reached the level of a rank 3 alchemist. Even an elite Do D would have to be respectful when meeting an alchemist of this level. How would a Bao dare to be careless? If he could form a relationship with such a person, it would bring him endless benefits. Here. Xiao Yan randomly tossed it. A ray of light immediately shot toward A Bao. Seeing this, the latter hurriedly and carefully caught it in his hand. After which, he focused his eyes and saw that it was a round medicinal pill that had landed in his hand. This is a rank 3 medicinal pill. Seeing this, A Bao was immediately overjoyed. Both of his eyes revealed a deep excitement. His entire body involuntarily trembled because of the wild joy in his heart. A rank 3 medicinal pill was something that he did not even dare to think about in the past. Now that it had actually landed in his hands, how could he not be overjoyed? There is no need to be surprised. This is only your reward for this week. I still need to borrow your cave for a period of time. Once the time is up, these medicinal pills will also be yours. Xiao Yan casually said as he waved the jade bottle in his hand. Through the bottle, one could clearly see 3 round medicinal pills. These 3 medicinal pills were all rank 3 medicinal pills. Sir, feel free to use them. You can use them for as long as you want. A Bao will definitely not be dissatisfied. The middle-aged man was overjoyed. Xiao Yan had taken out medicinal pills as a reward. He could not be happier in his heart, so how could he feel dissatisfied? Thinking about being able to obtain 3 rank 3 medicinal pills, A Bao's heart became even more excited. During this week, although there had been many people wandering around his territory, no one had dared to come to his place. It could be said that the medicinal pill in his hand was something that he had been waiting for. He had not spent the slightest bit of effort. Now that such a good thing had been placed in front of him, A Bao naturally would not miss it. My request is very simple. It's the same as this week. As long as no one can enter this place and disturb me, these 3 medicinal pills will be yours. Otherwise... Sir, don't worry. With A Bao here, no one can enter this place. A Bao will definitely not let anyone disturb sir. Before Xiao Yan's words sounded, A Bao continued to open his mouth. At the same time, he patted his chest, appearing as though he was leaving everything to him. He appeared to be quite confident. Xiao Yan raised his eyes and looked at the latter. His eyes faintly flickered, but he did not comment. Although A Bao's strength could be considered as an expert in this mountain range, a mere 9-star half-emperor was already nothing in Xiao Yan's eyes. In the eyes of the 4 great clans, A Bao was worthless. If Hua Ting intended to search for Xiao Yan, A Bao would definitely be unable to stop him with his strength. A Bao randomly gave a couple of instructions before withdrawing with a heart filled with joy. Xiao Yan also withdrew his thoughts as his gaze once again landed on the jade box in his hand. Whether or not he could leave this place completely depended on this jade bone fruit. Chapter 749. In the blink of an eye, another month had passed. Within the Hua clan, Hua Ting's old face was gloomy as he sat on the main seat in a large hall. Due to the previous incident, he, as the 3rd elder of the clan, had been grounded for a month. Only now was the ban lifted. At this moment, other than the gloomy Hua Ting, there were quite a number of people in the hall. They were the various deacons of the Hua clan and more or less had some authority in the clan. At the same time, they were also the people who had been sent by Hua Ting to search for Xiao Yan's whereabouts a month ago. Humph, I haven't seen you for a month. How have you all been? Hua Ting's cold eyes swept across everyone present. Every clan had its own faction. Even if they were from the same clan, these people did not always work together. For example, the people present were in Hua Ting's faction. As for the 1st elder and 2nd elder of the clan, they also had their own factions behind them. Of course, no matter how they were divided within the clan, as long as it concerned the interests of the clan, these people would usually immediately work together. Upon hearing Hua Ting's words, quite a number of people present looked to each other. Their expressions became awkward. They belonged to the same faction, yet they did nothing when Hua Ting was grounded. Such a matter was indeed enough to make one feel bitterly disappointed. Humph, I don't want to care about these matters now. I only want to ask, there are so many of you. In addition to the many clan members that I sent after, why were you unable to find Xiao Yan in the end? You all must give me an answer on this matter. Hua Ting's hand heavily slammed on the table below him. The frightening force caused the wooden table to instantly explode. The expressions on the faces of everyone present abruptly changed at this moment. Third Elder, we did indeed search the entire mountain range back then. Moreover, we repeatedly searched 4 to 5 times. However, we did not find any trace of Xiao Yan from the beginning until the end. Perhaps he had already left that mountain range back then. Among the people seated below the stage, someone braced himself and voiced his opinion to Hua Ting. The instant these words left his mouth, Hua Ting's sinister gaze immediately landed on the person who had spoken. That extremely cold gaze seemed to want to forcefully freeze a person. Everyone below the stage who saw this scene shrank back in fear. Do you mean that this old man did not investigate and that this old man allowed all of you to make this trip in vain? Gulp gulp. After Hua Ting's words left his mouth, an invisible aura was emitted from his body and swiftly enveloped the entire hall. Everyone felt as if they were carrying a mountain. This was especially the case for the person who had just spoken. The person's entire body was unable to help but tremble. Humph, since this old man allowed all of you to search, I naturally had full confidence. Based on the situation at that time, even if that brat was not seriously injured, he could not have easily left the mountain range. However, since you were unable to find him, this means that all of you did not search carefully. There must be places that you missed in that mountain range. Hua Ting's stern gaze slowly swept across everyone present. After meeting Hua Ting's gaze, the majority of the people looked to their left and right with a doubtful expression on their faces. It was as if they did not understand what was going on. There were also some who were deep in thought, as if they were trying to recall if there were any places that they had missed in that mountain range a month ago. Just as Hua Ting's gaze swept across a certain person, his gaze, which was originally about to pass by, suddenly paused. His eyes narrowed as he stared at a skinny middle-aged man in the hall. Hua Ting's brows were tightly knitted together as he asked in a deep voice. Hua Feng, is there something that you have not told me? No. The middle-aged man, who was called Hua Feng, hurriedly stood up. The expression on his face was clearly somewhat flustered. Humph, you're truly audacious. You dare to play tricks in front of this old man? I think that you don't want to live a peaceful life anymore. After being coldly reprimanded by Hua Ting, the middle-aged man's face was filled with fear. His face rapidly turned pale as his gaze involuntarily looked around. In the end, when he saw Hua Yun, his eyes abruptly lit up. It was also at this moment that Hua Ting noticed the change in the latter's expression. Immediately, his stern gaze landed on Hua Yun. Hua Yun, speak. Exactly what is going on? If you don't speak, then you can forget about your position as a deacon. Once those words were spoken, Hua Yun's expression, which was already ugly to begin with, suddenly became frightened. He knew the meaning behind Hua Feng's gaze. It was none other than the matter of Ah Bao's cave. After all, that was the only place that they had not searched. Subsequently, under Hua Ting's unceasing pressure, Hua Yun had no choice but to tell Hua Ting everything that had happened that day. What did you say? A mere 9-star half-martial emperor actually managed to stop a deacon of my Hua clan. You even brought 2 7-star half-martial emperors with you. You really are. After listening to Hua Yun's narration, Hua Ting's heart became even more infuriated. His gaze ruthlessly cut through the 3 people from that day as if he wanted to devour them. After a long while, he finally took a deep breath, slightly closed his old eyes and weakly said, Pass down the order. Hua Yun's position as a deacon will be revoked from today onwards. In addition, he will be fined 10 spirit stones and 3 months' salary. The same goes for the other 2. In addition, they will face the wall for a month. Within this month, they are not allowed to take even half a step out of their homes. Under the terrified gazes of Hua Yun and the other 2, the Hua clan's guards entered from outside. They first brought the other 2 out. When they arrived at Hua Yun's place, the latter's entire body trembled as he knelt down. His eyes were about to split open as he kowtowed to Hua Ting and begged for mercy. Scram! You'd best not let me see you again unless you want to die. Hua Ting showed no mercy. With a wave of his sleeve, a frightening energy immediately surged out. With merely a single strike, he sent Hua Yun flying. After Hua Yun ruthlessly smashed through several walls in the courtyard, he landed on the ground with serious injuries. It must be said that this time around, Xiao Yan had escaped unscathed. Hua Ting was truly enraged in his heart. As the Hua clan's third elder, he possessed a high status and authority. Yet, he had been reduced to such a sorry state by a mere brat. Not only had he failed to capture the culprit, he had even been grounded for a month. As the leader of the Hua clan, this matter had caused him to lose all face. Right now, immediately, order people to go to Xian City and inform that bastard Lin Zheong to capture that 9-star half-martial emperor. This old man wants to personally consult him. Chapter 750. Xian City. Lin family residence. Humph. Old bastard. How dare you treat our Lin family like your lackeys? How dare you ask me to clean up after you? Hua Ting. In the Lin family's meeting hall, Lin Zheong's body trembled slightly as he sat on the main seat. With a furious look on his face, he violently threw away a jade strip in his hand. Lin Ran could not help but frown when he saw this. He walked over and picked up the jade strip. Then he lifted his head to look at Lin Zheong and asked in a puzzled voice, "Father, what happened? What did Hua Ting say?" Lin Ran's brows were tightly knitted together as he asked this question. Since his father was so angry, it could not be anything good. Humph. Take a look for yourself. That old bastard. When our Lin family rises in the future, we will definitely destroy your Hua family to show our Lin family's might. Under his sleeves, Lin Zheong's hands were tightly clenched into fists. His veins were bulging and the anger on his face was a reflection of his inner emotions. At the same time, Lin Ran injected a trace of spiritual energy into the jade strip in his hand. Then, the information contained in the jade strip appeared in Lin Ran's mind without missing a single detail. After a few short breaths, Lin Ran's expression quickly turned dark. Deep resentment gushed out from his eyes. Hua Ting was treating them like his lackeys. According to the information contained in the jade strip, Hua Ting wanted Lin Zheong to go to the Bai family's territory and capture the Beast King in the mountain range that they had searched previously. Soon, Hua Ting would personally come over to ask about it. Furthermore, Hua Ting had also threatened that if Lin Zheong did not handle this matter well, he would double the tribute that the Lin family had to pay this year. This was bullying. This Hua clan is really too much of a bully. Our Lin clan has done so much for them in the past. Now, they actually suppress our Lin clan just because of a disagreement. He is clearly venting all of the anger that Xiao Yan has caused him on us. Lin Ran frowned. The expression on his face was as gloomy as his father's. No wonder they were father and son. Their expressions were extremely similar. Humph, what's the point of saying so much now? We can only endure for now. The problem now is that even though the strongest person in that mountain range only possesses the strength of a 9-star half-martial emperor, that place is the Bai family's territory. This is a bit troublesome. Lin Zheong coldly snorted. He could not help but furrow his brows. The territories of the 4 great clans usually did not interfere with each other. Even Hua Ting was unwilling to step into the Bai clan's territory. His Lin clan was currently only a subsidiary force of the other 2 clans. If he stepped into the Bai clan's territory, he was afraid that the Bai clan would inevitably become the subject of ridicule. At that time, the 2 clans would jointly pressure the Lin clan, which would be even more troublesome. What should we do now? If we don't bring that bastard back, Hua Ting will definitely vent his anger on our Lin family. When that happens, we will have to pay twice the salary and the Bai family. This is a huge price to pay. The Lin clan had already spent a lot of money in the previous auction. If they had to pay twice the salary now, it would definitely shake the foundations of the Lin clan. Damn it, I can't care about so much now. The Bai clan's territory is so huge, they can't possibly take care of everything. Moreover, if something really happens, we can just push the responsibility to Hua Ting. Right now, the most important thing is to capture that bastard. After making up his mind, Lin Zheong withdrew his thoughts. Whether or not he went was the most important thing. If he was able to safely bring that bastard back, this matter would naturally end here. However, if he was discovered, the result would be the same. Therefore, it was better to give it a try and test his luck. After which, Lin Zheong moved and flew towards the southern part of Xian City alone. That place was the Bai clan's territory. At the same time that Lin Zheong left Xian City, A white-clothed young man at a certain spot in Xian City also saw this scene. Immediately, the white-clothed young man gently raised his eyes. Both of his eyes stared in the direction that Lin Zheong had left in. He hesitated for a moment before moving and following close behind. The territory of the Bai clan was extremely vast. However, it was merely a so in the eyes of an elite Do Di. With Lin Zheong's speed, he had already approached the middle of the mountain range below after a long journey in less than 2 hours. Lin Zheong, who was originally swiftly flying forward, suddenly frowned after arriving at this place. He had been busy with his journey and was worried that he would bump into the members of the Bai clan. Hence, he did not pay attention to his surroundings. Despite this, he was still able to sense a faint aura that had been following close behind him not long ago. Although Lin Zheong had left the other party far behind due to the difference in strength between the two parties, the other party had actually caught up with him a short while later. This involuntarily caused Lin Zheong's heart to be slightly startled. He wondered if the person who was following close behind him was someone from the Bai clan. A killing intent involuntarily rose in Lin Zheong's heart when he thought of this. Judging from the aura, the other party was clearly no match for him. If this person was a bandit from the Bai clan, Lin Zheong would take the opportunity to kill him and end everything once and for all. It would also prevent him from creating any trouble. With this thought in his heart, Lin Zheong immediately flashed and hid in the mountain forest below. He withdrew his aura and waited for the arrival of that person. A short while later, there was indeed a person who swiftly flew over from the distant empty space. Just as he passed by the empty space above Lin Zheong's head, the figure paused. He frowned and looked into the distance, as though he was searching for something. A short moment later, the young figure helplessly frowned. His handsome face revealed a suspicious expression. Immediately, his body moved and he continued to fly towards the depths of the mountain range. Lin Zheong's heart leaped when he saw this person in the mountain forest below. He did not expect to meet him here. At this moment, the fluttering white-clothed young man standing in the air was the young master of the Bai clan, Bai Zhan. Why is it him? This fellow usually does not step out of his house. Why would he appear here? However, looking at his appearance just now, it seems that he did not recognize me. Otherwise, I would be in big trouble. Lin Zheong quietly said in his heart. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. However, he did not dare to relax in his heart. When he saw Bai Zhan, Lin Zheong's body no longer soared into the air. Instead, he chose to move quickly in the forest below in order to avoid meeting Bai Zhan. On the other side, after Bai Zhan confirmed that he had distanced himself from Lin Zheong, his body paused in the air. His eyes narrowed and a cold glint gradually appeared in his eyes. Chapter 751. The majestic mountain peak towered into the clouds. Under the sunlight, the shadow of the mountain covered a large area of the forest below. At this moment, a figure was moving rapidly in the forest. In a short while, he arrived at the foot of the mountain. Unlike the dense forest in the distance, there was quite a large empty space at the foot of the mountain. At a glance, one could see the remains of quite a number of large magical beast corpses. The air was filled with a dense bloody scent that caused one to feel nauseous. Normally speaking, the cave of an ordinary magical beast would be arranged in a more secretive manner in order to increase its safety. However, this place was different. An enormous cave was purposely exposed. The skeletons of those magical beasts served as a foil to the majesty and overbearing aura of the owner of this place. It was likely that one would not be able to find a second place in the entire mountain range that could compare with this cave. At this moment, the target of that human figure was precisely this place. According to Lin Zheong's information, that 9-star half-martial emperor-level demonic beast was an extreme shadow leopard. It was the only 9-star half-martial emperor in this mountain range. It could be said that everything in this mountain range was under its control. In the blink of an eye, Lin Zheong had already appeared in front of Ah Bao's cave. At the same time, Ah Bao, who was within the cave, appeared to have sensed something and instantly opened his eyes. However, this time around was different from the last time. The instant Ah Bao opened his eyes, a deep horror involuntarily surged out from within his brown-red eyes. Before this, Xiao Yan had never told him that the person who had come to find him would be as strong as a Do Di. Just who is this fellow? Why is it that even an elite Do Di has come in order to find him? This thought flashed across Ah Bao's heart in both shock and fear. However, he did not dare to be careless. The other party was after all an elite Do D. He was merely a Band D. Since the other party had already arrived in front of his cave, how would he dare to not come out to welcome him? I did not know that Sir had arrived. Please forgive me. Ah Bao hurriedly exited the cave. He hurriedly bowed to Lin Zheong, who was currently standing in front of the cave. At the same time, his mouth spoke respectfully. Humph, don't try this with the old me. Speak. Did an injured human enter your cave? Lin Zheong was already used to Ah Bao's actions. He was too lazy to be bothered. He coldly snorted and went straight to the point. Once these words were spoken, Ah Bao's heart was greatly shaken. He thought in his heart that the person in front of him was indeed here for Xiao Yan. However, his heart was filled with bitterness and helplessness. At this moment, regardless of whether it was Xiao Yan who was in the cave or Lin Zheong who was in front of him, both of them were existences that he could not afford to offend. If he were to accidentally let slip something, it was possible that he could take his life at any time. This caused Ah Bao to complain incessantly in his heart. Sir, I don't understand what you mean. After a long while, Ah Bao, who was prostrating on the ground, rolled his eyes, hoping that he could get away with it. Humph, since you don't want to say it, I won't force you. But I have to warn you first, if you don't say it now, I won't do anything to you. But I can't guarantee that others won't do anything to you. Lin Zheong coldly laughed. His gaze randomly glanced at the cave behind Ah Bao. Originally, he wanted to enter and search it. However, he gave up on this thought after a moment. Xiao Yan had already disappeared from this mountain range for a month. After such a long time, it was likely that the injuries on his body had already healed. How could he continue to stay in this place? Hence, Lin Zheong thought that he might as well bring Ah Bao back and report to the Bai clan as soon as possible. This would save him the trouble of worrying about being discovered by the Bai clan. Ah Bao's heart was immediately startled when he heard Lin Zheong's words. However, before he could think any further, Lin Zheong immediately attacked. He waved his large hand and a majestic Do Chi spluttered out from his palm. With just one move, he easily subdued Ah Bao, who was a 9-star Band D. It must be said that a Do D was like an invincible existence in the face of a Band D. The strongest technique in the eyes of a Band D was like a fart in the eyes of a Band D. Ah Bao's expression immediately changed drastically after being subdued by Lin Zheong with one hand. He used all of his strength in hopes of escaping the restraint. However, the Do Chi that seemed to cover his body like a thin film was actually as hard as metal. No matter how hard he struggled, he was unable to escape. On the contrary, each time his attempt to escape became increasingly intense, the thin film that covered his body would shrink a little, forcefully squeezing his entire body. An even more intense pain was immediately transmitted over, causing Ah Bao to involuntarily emit waves of miserable screams. Humph, you really overestimate yourself. Obediently follow the old me back and you might be able to suffer less. Otherwise, the more you struggle, the more intense the pain you will suffer. Lin Zheong parted his mouth and laughed coldly. The row of teeth he revealed appeared extremely dense. However, just as he was about to bring Ah Bao back to the clan, he was helpless against Ah Bao. All he could do was place his final hope on Xiao Yan. He hoped that this fellow would not forget the relationship that he had worked hard to protect and would save him. Sir, save me. A miserable screech was mightily emitted from Ah Bao's mouth. This voice was mixed with Do Chi, causing the entire mountain in front of him to tremble slightly. Soon after, the thin film of Do Chi that covered Ah Bao's body immediately became even narrower. Looking from the outside, his entire face had become distorted. However, at this moment, Lin Zheong's brows were knit together the moment Ah Bao let out a loud cry. An uneasy feeling involuntarily surged into his heart. The sudden loud cry of Sir by Ah Bao caused him to involuntarily think of Xiao Yan. Don't tell me that that fellow has not left? This sudden thought in his heart caused Lin Zheong to feel both shock and fear in his heart. He was shocked that Xiao Yan had yet to leave. This meant that he had found him. As long as he found the people from the Bai clan and the Hua clan to capture Xiao Yan, he would be the greatest contributor to this matter. On the other hand, his Lin clan would definitely receive a great reward. On the other hand, he was afraid that Xiao Yan's injuries might have already recovered after a month. This fellow had a terrifying battle record of killing a 3-star Do D in the outside world. Regardless of the truth, just this point alone meant that Xiao Yan was not someone that he could deal with. Once they fought, it was likely that he would immediately fall into a disadvantage. Lin Zihong's heart hardened when he thought of this. From Ah Bao's action just now, it was likely that Xiao Yan would intervene on his behalf. Once Xiao Yan's heart was on Ah Bao's side, Lin Ziyong would immediately have an additional layer of protection. If he could borrow Ah Bao to cause Xiao Yan to hold back, all he needed to do was to send a message to the people from the two large clans. At that time, it would really be difficult for Xiao Yan to escape even if he had wings. Lin Ziyong hurriedly controlled Ah Bao's body with the intention of grabbing the latter's throat. It was also at this moment that an extremely frightening spiritual strength suddenly descended. Not only did it shatter the Do Chi film that wrapped around Ah Bao's body, but it also directly pulled Ah Bao in the direction of the cave. Cuckoo, Clan Head Lin, we have not met for a month. Why are you still doing such a thing? You want to use such a despicable method to threaten me. Clan Head Lin really has a good plan. Unfortunately, you are a little late. Remember, in your next life, don't think so much if you want to kill someone. Chapter 752. Between Heaven and Earth, Xiao Yan's mocking voice leisurely drifted. On the ground below, Lin Ziyong, who was standing in front of Xiao Yan's cave, had a green and white expression on his face. The muscles at the corner of his eyes involuntarily twitched intensely. His gaze swept all around him, hoping to find traces of Xiao Yan. Haha, are you looking for me again? Aren't I right in front of you? Suddenly, an extremely clear sound of lips biting was transmitted from beside Lin Zihong's ear. It was as if someone was speaking into his ear. Lin Zihong's face was suddenly filled with shock. At the same time, the expression on his face changed, and his body hurriedly retreated. Only when he had retreated to the edge of the open space did he raise his head to take a look. He saw a young man wearing a black robe standing at the spot where he was standing a moment ago. This person was Xiao Yan, who had disappeared for a month. Xiao Yan. Lin Zihong's expression was extremely grave as he muttered in a deep voice. At the same time, the Do Chi within the vortex within his body was also swiftly raised at this moment. He was prepared to face Xiao Yan at any moment. Although Xiao Yan's strength appeared to only be that of a 6-star half-martial emperor, anyone in the current western region who had some understanding of him clearly knew that behind this seemingly weak strength of his, there was a powerful destructive force that caused even Do Di to feel fear. When facing him, no Do Di would dare to be careless. Seeing this, Xiao Yan parted his mouth and smiled, revealing a playful arc. Coincidentally, after swallowing the jade bone fruit, his strength had already stepped into the late stage of a 6-star half-martial emperor. Even the might of his force elephant technique had increased slightly. He wondered what kind of might his force elephant technique would be able to erupt with if he were to fight now. This guy. Seeing the indescribable arc on the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth, Lin Zihong's heart tightened. This kind of smile was extremely frightening in his eyes. Only God knew what this guy in front of him was thinking. Lin Ziyong did not wish to lose his life in this place. Soon after, however, Xiao Yan suddenly frowned just as he was about to attack. Within his spiritual perception, there was another person who was swiftly flying in the direction of the two of them. It's him. Xiao Yan was slightly surprised. He didn't expect that even he would come. A short while later, a human figure appeared in front of Xiao Yan and Lin Zihong's sight. At the same time, Ah Bao, who was hiding far behind the two of them, also noticed the newcomer. Immediately, a stunned expression appeared in his eyes. He was within the Bai clan's sphere of influence and was naturally well aware of this person's identity. This person was the young master of the Bai clan, Bai Zhan. Damn it! How did he discover the commotion here? When he saw Bai Zhan, Lin Zihong's already heavy heart instantly sank to the bottom. However, he immediately relaxed a little and thought of a solution. Clan leader Lin, why are you here? There's actually Xiao Yan. When Bai Zhan saw Lin Ziyong, his eyes flickered slightly as he asked a question that he already knew the answer to. Then, his gaze turned and landed on Xiao Yan. Deep within his eyes, a trace of astonishment could not help but flash. He didn't expect Xiao Yan to still be in this mountain range. Lord Crown Prince, you came at the right time. A few days ago, I heard that there was some movement in the depths of this mountain range. I'm afraid that Xiao Yan is still here. Hence, I specially came here today to observe. I did not report to clan leader Bai in advance. This is my fault. Lin Ziyong did not hear anything from Bai Zhan's words. He pretended to cup his fists at Bai Zhan as he muttered to himself. From his words, It seemed as if he was admitting his mistake, but also as if he was asking for credit. No matter. Everything will be fine as long as we find Xiao Yan. A sharp glow shot out from Bai Zhan's eyes. Lin Zheong only thought that Bai Zhan was targeting Xiao Yan. He immediately coldly laughed in his heart. Humph, you are indeed just trash. You actually still have the thought of capturing Xiao Yan at such a time. Once you die in Xiao Yan's hands, humph, the Bai clan. Lin Zheong coldly laughed in his heart. He immediately recovered and turned his gaze to Xiao Yan. It seemed that he was afraid that the latter would reveal the truth. Fortunately, Xiao Yan did not open his mouth. His gaze had landed on Bai Zhan since the beginning. Lin Zheong did not know, but Bai Zhan knew that Bai Zhan's strength appeared to be that of a 9-star half-emperor. However, his strength had already reached the middle stage of a 2-star Do-D. Lin Zheong alone was not a match for him. Even Xiao Yan himself would have difficulty being a match for Bai Zhan without relying on the Northern King. Since you and I have met Xiao Yan today, why don't we take advantage of this opportunity to attack together and capture him? At that time, you can bring him back to the clan and hand him over to the sect. This will be a great merit. Lin Zheong revealed an earnest smile to Bai Zhan. The gaze he used to look at the latter was as if he was looking at a fool. Oh! Bai Zhan's eyes brightened. It was as if he had really been tricked. However, he quickly frowned and asked in a doubtful voice, Clan head Lin, you won't be doing this for nothing, right? Humph, pretending to be smart. Lin Zheong coldly laughed in his heart and hurriedly said, Haha, what are you saying, heir? We belong to the same group and are all members of the sect. There is no need to treat us as outsiders. Right now, it is more important to deal with Xiao Yan first. Although Lin Zheong said this, he did not think this way in his heart. He was not a match for Xiao Yan alone. Of course, he did not expect Bai Zhan, a 9-star half-emperor, to be of any help. He only hoped that Bai Zhan would be able to hold back Xiao Yan so that he could find an opportunity to leave this place. At that time, even if Bai Zhan died, this matter would only be blamed on Xiao Yan. Lin Zheong only needed to go back and fabricate this matter to Hua Ting to get away. Naturally, he would be fine. This way, not only would his clan be safe, but he would also be able to get rid of the heir of the Bai clan. When the Bai clan was destroyed in the future, it would be the time for his Lin clan to rise to power. When he thought about the arrival of that day, Lin Zheong felt a little excited. Let's take action now and take down Xiao Yan. With a cold cry from his mouth, Lin Zheong's body shook. The Do-Chi in his body immediately gathered on his arms. His pair of eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan on the opposite side. The corner of his mouth slowly lifted into an extremely cold smile. At the same time, Bai Zhan, who was beside him, also grinned. He lifted his gaze and stared at Xiao Yan. The smile on his face gradually widened. Seeing this, the latter could not help but frown slightly. The Do-Chi in the cyclone in his body quietly turned to the left. At the same time, the Northern King in the storage ring was also secretly preparing. However, in the next moment, Chi! The sound of bones breaking could be heard. Lin Zheong, who was beside Bai Zhan, had already been beheaded. Chapter 753. This sudden turn of events caused Xiao Yan, who was on the opposite side, to be involuntarily stunned. He did not expect that the two people in front of him, who were about to attack him, would suddenly turn into such a state. Of course, the person who was the most sullen at this moment was likely Lin Zheong. Even until his death, he did not understand why Bai Zhan, who was beside him, would attack him. The trash in his eyes, who he thought was a fool, had killed him at the most critical moment while he was unprepared. Who would continue to think that he was a fool after using such tactics? After all, anyone with a discerning eye would be able to hear that Lin Zheong did not have any good intentions when he said those words. Bai Zhan appeared to have fallen into his trap. However, only at the last moment did Lin Zheong truly understand that Bai Zhan was not a fool. Instead, he was too naive. From the beginning until the end, Bai Zhan had treated the other party like a fool. The other party had also treated him in the same manner. It was just that Bai Zhan was unable to see through it. Bang! Following a muffled sound, Lin Zheong's corpse fell to the ground like a pile of mud. Fresh blood continued to splatter. After twitching a couple of times, it stopped moving. Bai Zhan narrowed his eyes when he saw this. A sharp glint shot out from his eyes. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a cold smile. At the same time, he raised his hand and aimed his palm at Lin Zihong's corpse. Soon after, a wild suction force surged out from Bai Zhan's palm. Lin Zihong's body was immediately lifted into the air by this suction force. Bai Zhan's hand suddenly withdrew. Following a miserable cry, Lin Zihong's corpse once again smashed heavily onto the ground. At the same time, an illusionary body appeared in Bai Zhan's hand. From the looks of it, it was Lin Ziyong. In the Yuanwu continent, as long as one's strength reached the Do D class, one's spiritual essence would not scatter even if one did not have a physical body. Hence, the current Lin Zihong's spiritual essence within his body was completely undamaged. You are not a bandit. Only at this moment did Lin Ziyong, whose body had already turned illusionary, truly realize that the strength of the Bai Zhan in front of him was not that of a 9-star bandit. The other party's strength was even stronger than Lin Ziyong at his peak. You are correct. However, it is too late. Bai Zhan coldly laughed as he mocked. Why are you helping him? Don't you also want me to die? As long as I die, and with your interference, my father will definitely blame all of this on Xiao Yan. When my Bai clan and Xiao Yan fight to the death, your Lin clan will be able to replace my Bai clan's position. Bai Zhan sneered. He had already roughly grasped the latter's thoughts. However, it was a pity that such thoughts were just wishful thinking in his opinion. Hearing Bai Zhan's words, Lin Ziyong couldn't help but reveal a deep fear in his eyes. He didn't expect the young Bai Zhan to have such a meticulous mind. What the Bai clan could think of, he had thought of it without a single mistake. Boom! Immediately after, without waiting for Lin Ziyong to struggle, Bai Zhan's hand, which was pinching Lin Zihong's neck, suddenly exerted force and crushed Lin Zihong's neck. This time, Lin Zihong's life could be considered to have come to an end. After doing all this, Bai Zhan finally raised his head and looked at Xiao Yan on the opposite side. He smiled and said, Mr. Xiao Yan is truly a capable person. A month ago, you were still a middle-stage 6-star half-martial emperor. In the blink of an eye, you've already reached late-stage 6-star half-martial emperor. This sort of frightening cultivation speed is truly stupefying. Haha, I merely borrowed the miraculous effect of the jade bone fruit. It can't be considered much. Xiao Yan lightly smiled. He was not exaggerating. Hearing that, a radiance flashed through Bai Zhan's eyes. He thought to himself, sure enough, Lin Ziyong is dead. I believe that the Lin clan will soon discover that Lin Ziyong is dead. At that time, they will inevitably send people over. Mr. Xiao Yan, do you still plan to continue to stay here? Bai Zhan looked to Xiao Yan with a smile that was not a smile. Hearing those words, the latter frowned slightly. Soon after, the corners of his mouth curled up. He smiled and said, Brother Bai's scheming is much better than this fellow's. Once I leave, the crime of killing Lin Ziyong will be placed on my head. That way, the Hua clan will turn their attention to you and your Bai clan will have less pressure. Bai Zhan frowned slightly. He did have such a plan. On one hand, he wanted to find an excuse for himself. On the other hand, he hoped that he would be able to use this opportunity to gather the Hua clan's attention on Xiao Yan. To his Bai clan, this would be extremely beneficial. However, looking at Xiao Yan's current appearance, it seemed that, forget it. Seeing that you helped me get rid of him, I can help you take the blame. However, I want something from you. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Seeing the smile that was lifted from the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth, Bai Zhan's heart involuntarily tightened. Why did this smile give him a strange feeling? However, in the end, Bai Zhan violently clenched his teeth and asked in a solemn voice. May I know what Mr. Xiao Yan wants? That 5-star Do D class monster core. Bai Zhan's words had just sounded when Xiao Yan immediately spoke. At the same time, the latter's expression instantly changed. The muscles on the corner of his mouth twitched wildly. This action of Xiao Yan really had the feeling of snatching food from a tiger's mouth. That monster core was something that both father and son valued greatly. Although they knew in their hearts that the result of refining it would be greatly reduced, they were unwilling to give it up. At this moment, Xiao Yan had actually unceremoniously opened his mouth to ask for this thing. Even with Bai Zhan's character, he could not help but have the impulse to curse at this moment. Bai Zhan was quiet for a long while before he finally calmed himself down. A thought flew in his heart, but he was unable to think of a complete reason to reply to Xiao Yan. That The monster core is in my father's hands. Perhaps I can accompany you here and wait for the arrival of the Lin clan. I think that the Hua clan will also send someone here not long later. Before Bai Zhan could finish speaking, Xiao Yan interrupted him. Xiao Yan smiled as he looked at Bai Zhan. His indifferent manner caused Bai Zhan's heart to itch with anger. He wished that he could charge forward and bite Xiao Yan a couple of times. However, in the end, Bai Zhan could only helplessly compromise. After all, that monster core might be a treasure, but compared to it, the future of the clan was more important. Hence, after Bai Zhan quietly weighed the pros and cons in his heart, he finally threw a jade box that contained the monster core to Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan did not inspect it. Instead, he threw it into his storage ring. The other party currently had a weakness that he could use against him. Naturally, Bai Zhan would not dare to give him a fake one. Otherwise, Bai Zhan should have expected that kind of result. Thanks. We will meet again. Xiao Yan grinned and revealed a smile that was as bright as the sun. However, this smile caused Bai Zhan to bitterly laugh when he saw it. Xiao Yan turned around and called out to Ah Bao, who was carefully observing from afar. When Ah Bao heard Xiao Yan's words, he immediately ran over and obediently followed behind Xiao Yan. The two of them swiftly flew towards the southern horizon. Bai Zhan looked at the direction where the two of them had gradually disappeared from where he stood. His face finally revealed a helpless expression. He looked at Lin Zheong, who had already died beside him, and cursed softly. Immediately, he waved his sleeves and a cluster of turbulent flames immediately flew out, turning Lin Zheong's corpse and head into ashes in an instant. Chapter 754. After leaving the territory of the Bai clan, Xiao Yan conveniently brought a Bao with him. Although this 9-star half-martial emperor was currently very weak, as long as he was given sufficient time or the opportunity, it would be extremely easy for him to step into the Do D class. Next, Xiao Yan's target was to head to the south of the Shilin region, the Shilin mountain range. Currently, the medicinal ingredients needed to refine the medicinal pill had been gathered. It was time for Xiao Yan to refine the Bodhisattva returning pill. Once he successfully refined the Bodhisattva returning pill and obtained the icy spirit cold liquid, there would be hope for the ice spirit pill. Once the ice spirit pill was refined, it would be time for Xiao Yan to swallow the heavenly flame. Now, the day of swallowing the heavenly flame was approaching. However, Xiao Yan also felt a sense of loss in his heart at the same time. Unlike an ordinary person who borrowed the strength of a heavenly flame, once he swallowed Gu Yu's actual body, Gu Yu's consciousness would disappear. At that time, Gu Yu, who had accompanied Xiao Yan, would completely disappear from this world. This thought caused Xiao Yan's heart to feel an endless loneliness. Of course, Xiao Yan also understood in his heart that this was Gu Yu's mission. Gu Yu's existence was to wait for Xiao Yan's arrival. According to Gu Yu's words, he was already tired of living like this. Haha, little fellow, there is no need to mind. It is inevitable that you will swallow the bone-chilling flame. The old me has been trapped in this world for too long. If you can successfully swallow the bone-chilling flame, it will be a kind of release for me. Gu Yu sensed the change in Xiao Yan's mental state along the way. He immediately made a guess in his heart. Xiao Yan quietly nodded in his heart after hearing Gu Yu's words. The disappointed expression on his face was also withdrawn. He led a Bao behind him and swiftly flew in the direction of the Shilin mountain range. In the blink of an eye, 1 month had passed. Currently, there was still more than a year left before the 2-year agreement between Xiao Yan and Lang Bingshuang. However, Xiao Yan had already found the medicinal ingredients to refine the Bodhisattva pill and returned here once again. Xiao Yan stood high in the sky. His gaze looked at the vast mountain range in front of him, which he could not see the end of. His heart finally sighed in relief. Arriving at this place gave him the feeling that he had found his family. Compared to the complicated emotions of a human, everything in this place appeared much more straightforward. The so-called good and evil were easily displayed in this place. At the very least, Xiao Yan did not need to scheme against the magical beasts in this mountain range. At this moment, even Ah Bao, who was standing behind Xiao Yan, also swept his gaze over the mountain range in front of him. A shock immediately surged into his eyes. Compared to the mountain range he was in, this place was simply boundless. Comparing the two, it actually felt like a small child in the presence of a great one. Perhaps, this Shilin mountain range would be tens or hundreds of times the size of his mountain range. Is this the Shilin mountain range? It is really, Huge. Abao's face was stunned as he opened his mouth. Originally, he wanted to say something impressive. However, in the end, he realized that he did not know how to describe the mountain range in front of him. All right, let's go. We have yet to reach our destination. Xiaoyan smiled. His body moved and took the lead to fly into the depths of the mountain range. Abao followed closely behind. Sir, Abao has a question that I have always wanted to ask you. May I know? Just ask. Abao involuntarily frowned during the journey and asked Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan faintly replied. He listened to Abao's words as he swiftly rushed forward. That is, sir, may I ask if you are really a human? Abao's Adam's apple moved slightly as he spoke, indicating the nervousness in his heart. Ever since Xiaoyan had recovered from his injuries, Abao had always faintly sensed a faint pressure from Xiaoyan's body. This kind of pressure came from the bloodline pressure between magical beasts. Only magical beasts could sense each other. When he had first met Xiaoyan back then, Abao had not sensed it due to Xiaoyan's weak aura. However, after Xiaoyan had recovered from his injuries, that strange pressure had been emitted from Xiaoyan's body. The closer he was, the clearer he could sense it. It was because of this that he had such a question. No. Hearing Abao's words, Xiaoyan secretly smiled. He naturally knew the reason, but there was no need to reveal it to Abao. Abao felt somewhat helpless in the face of Xiaoyan's vague answer. He scratched his head and followed closely behind Xiaoyan. However, he carefully maintained a distance. Not long after, Xiaoyan brought Abao to the depths of the Shilin mountain range. The Sky Eagle trio were nowhere to be seen, but Xiaoyan knew where they were. Xiaoyan smiled. A thought passed through his mind and the soul bead between his brows trembled slightly. Soon after, a majestic spiritual strength swiftly spread towards the mountain range below. After a few breaths of time, 3 figures sitting cross-legged in the depths of the earth suddenly opened their eyes. They raised their heads, and a fierce look appeared in their eyes. Who dares to spy here? Haha, there is no need to be nervous. It is me. Just as the expressions of the 3 changed, a somewhat illusory human figure slowly condensed in the empty space in front of them. These 3 were the 3 beast kings of the Shilin mountain range, Sky Eagle, Flame Lion and Xionggang. Xiaoyan. It's Xiaoyan. Brother Xiaoyan, you're back. The 3 of them cried out in surprise at the same time. The stern expression on their faces instantly turned into ecstasy. It seemed that there was nothing happier than seeing the person in front of them. Haha, 3 brothers, it's best if you come out and meet me. All right. The 3 of them exchanged glances with each other when they heard Xiaoyan's words. They immediately nodded their heads in agreement. First, they sealed the underground space where the 3 of them were located. After which, their bodies moved and they left this place. A few minutes later, in the sky outside, 5 figures stood impressively. When the Sky Eagle trio saw Xiaoyan again, it was as if they were brothers reuniting. The 3 of them stepped forward and gave Xiaoyan a big bear hug. Only then did the 3 of them notice Abao, who was behind Xiaoyan. This is, Sky Eagle frowned. The bloodline connection let him know at first glance that this guy was the same as them. They were all magical beasts. Moreover, he was also a 9-star half-emperor. Xiaoyan casually recounted what had happened in the Bai family's territory. Although it was an understatement, it still caused the expressions of the 3 in front of him to change. However, seeing that Xiaoyan had returned unharmed, they were able to relax. Right, brother Xiaoyan, you came back this time for... After coming back to his senses, Bai Ying first looked at Abao, who was behind Xiaoyan, then turned his gaze to Xiaoyan and asked in a puzzled voice. Haha, of course I'm back to fulfill the agreement. Chapter 755. Shilin Mountain Range. Within Tian Ying's cave. Xiaoyan and Tian Ying were seated within the large hall. As for Yan Shi and Xionggang, they thought that Abao was looking for a cave and had sent him away. Brother Xiaoyan, what you said earlier means, you have already finished refining the Bodhisattva returning pill? Tian Ying's face carried a trace of surprise. Ever since Xiaoyan had revealed his spiritual strength earlier, he had already sensed that the current Xiaoyan was no longer the same as before. He was no longer a rank 2 alchemist. In less than a year, the person in front of him had actually become a rank 3 alchemist that even an elite Do-Di would treat with respect. The Bodhisattva returning pill was a rank 3 medicinal pill. Tianying's heart immediately thought of the Bodhisattva returning pill when he heard that Xiao Yan had returned to deliver the promise. No, I have only just found the medicinal ingredients needed to refine the medicinal pill. I have yet to begin refining it. Xiao Yan smiled bitterly and shook his head when he heard Tianying's words. Although he had already become a rank 3 alchemist in the eyes of others, who would know that this rank 3 alchemist in name had yet to personally refine a true rank 3 medicinal pill. Tianying nodded his head when he saw this and said, "It's fine. Since the medicinal ingredients have already been found, refining the medicinal pill is merely a matter of time. You have also had a tough journey. You should rest at my place for a couple of days. I can see that your aura is a little weak. You have only broken through to the advanced 6-star half-martial emperor level not long ago, right?" Tianying first nodded his head. Soon after, he discovered another abnormality on Xiao Yan's body. He was surprised in his heart. He did not expect that Xiao Yan had actually broken through to the advanced 6-star half-martial emperor level so quickly. This kind of training speed was something that the three brothers could only hope to catch up with. Haha, it is merely borrowing external strength. It is nothing much. Xiao Yan smiled awkwardly when he heard this. He did not deny it. You're really a monster. Tianying's brows twitched. He involuntarily shook his head and smiled bitterly. Immediately, he randomly gave Xiao Yan some instructions before turning around and leaving this place. He left the remaining strength and space to Xiao Yan. All of a sudden, Xiao Yan was the only one left in the huge cave abode. Xiao Yan pondered for a moment. There was still a year before the agreement with Lung Bingshuang. During this period of time, it was completely enough for him to refine the Bodhi returning pill. His body lazily leaned against the back of the chair. Soon after, Xiao Yan's spirit was roused. He seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly stood up from the chair. Both of his hands were swiftly lifted from under his sleeves, revealing 2 fair palms. With a flick of his hand, a circle of pitch-black ancient scrolls appeared in Xiao Yan's left hand, while a palm-sized jade bottle appeared in his right hand. The pitch-black scroll was naturally the incomplete sage-grade cultivation method that had been auctioned off at the auction. As for the jade bottle, it naturally contained Xiao Xian's remnant soul. After Xiao Yan took out these 2 items, the empty space beside him became slightly distorted. Soon after, Gu Yu's body appeared. His eyes were firmly fixed on the black scroll in Xiao Yan's left hand from the very beginning. Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows slightly when he saw Gu Yu appear by the side. He had originally intended to ask Gu Yu for advice. Unexpectedly, Gu Yu had appeared on his own. "Old Gu, do you know what's different about this cultivation method?" Xiao Yan softly inquired as he opened the scroll in his left hand. Immediately, a fragment of an ancient qi method was exposed in the air. At this moment, the jade bottle in Xiao Yan's right hand trembled slightly. There seemed to be a mysterious connection between the two that could not be seen with the naked eye. I can't be wrong. This must be the origin skill. Gu Yu's eyes stared intently at the small fragment of the qi method in front of him. Both of his eyes involuntarily revealed a deep surprise. This is unexpected. I really did not expect that this thing, which had disappeared from the continent for so many years, would actually appear here. Moreover, it has appeared together with him. This is really fate. Gu Yu smacked his lips. A gloating smile appeared on his old face. Just how many people had once gone crazy over the origin skill? Because of this thing, a countless number of people had died. However, from the looks of it now, no one recognized it even though it was placed in front of them. This allowed Xiao Yan to take advantage of it. Origin skill, huh? A sage-grade qi method. I wonder just how powerful it is. Xiao Yan revealed a curious expression when he heard Gu Yu's words. He looked at the qi method fragment in his left hand. A qi method that could cause Gu Yu to exclaim was definitely extraordinary. Haha, this origin skill is not only powerful. It is not an exaggeration to call it heaven-defying. Gu Yu smiled. He did not hide the praise in his words. Xiao Yan lifted his eyebrows. He could not help but feel surprised in his heart. Just how heaven-defying was this origin skill? To think that Gu Yu would repeatedly praise it. Origin skill. Based on what I know, anyone who practices this qi method will definitely be able to reach the origin venerate level. Gu Yu mused for a moment. After which, he spoke to Xiao Yan in a solemn tone. Origin venerate. A shocked expression immediately appeared on Xiao Yan's face when Gu Yu's word sounded. Origin Venerate was a true top expert in the Yuan-Wu continent. An expert who stood at the top of the pyramid. Just what kind of qi method was this? It actually guaranteed that the practitioner would definitely be able to reach the Origin Venerate level. It was likely that even some cultivation geniuses, who boasted of their frightening talent, would not dare to make such a claim. But why would it cause ancestor Xiao Xian to react in such an unusual manner? Soon after, Xiao Yan recovered. The reason why he had taken out these two things was merely to find out why Xiao Xian's soul fragment had reacted in such an unusual manner. He was not concerned about just how frightening this qi method was. This is because your ancestor practices the origin skill. The qi method that he practices is of the same origin as this remnant scroll. This is why a mysterious connection is formed between them. What? Xiao Yan's expression changed drastically after Gu Yu's words sounded. From Gu Yu's words, it seemed that the qi method that Xiao Xian practiced was this origin skill. Don't be so anxious. If he had really practiced the complete version of the origin skill, how could his strength be stuck at the 9th star of the Doshang class? The reason why he was unable to break through to the Ban D class was because his qi method was incomplete. Incomplete! The excited expression on Xiao Yan's face was slowly withdrawn. The excitement in his heart also gradually returned to calmness. However, the doubt in his heart grew. Could it be that the origin skill that ancestor Xiao Xian practiced was merely an incomplete scroll? There is no need to think too much about it. The origin skill that your ancestor practiced is indeed complete. However, the one that he practiced only allowed his strength to reach the 9-star Doshang class.